Jigs and Bigs is proud to announce we're being supported by Old Glory Outdoors. They're a veteran-owned company that carries fishing and hunting gear. Plus, they're highly active in supporting veteran organizations and charities. Old Glory is an authorized dealer of favorite rods, FX rods, Guggen baits, X-Zone lures, Sixth Sense, and many more. There's a brick-and-mortar store located in East Brookfield, Massachusetts, but you can also order online at oldgloryoutdoors.com. They ship anywhere in the lower 48 states, or order online and pick up at the store. When you order, use the promo code Jigs and Bigs, and you'll save 10% off your complete order. Plus, you'll help support the show. Make sure to check out the apparel line called OGO Gear while you're there. Old Glory Outdoors believes in the slogan, "Start 'em young," to keep kids away from screens and enjoying nature. They've got a full array of live bait too. Check out oldgloryoutdoors.com and use the promo code Jigs and Bigs. Save some money and gear up now. Hey guys, Bobby Roast Beef here. Just finished editing this, epic recording here of stuff for Jigs and Bigs. I had a little a Zoom session with an old friend of mine, Shawn Dominic. Shawn and I, we used to work together back in, this goes back to high school. I guess it was the year I graduated high school. He and I started working together at a TV and appliance store. And, we had definitely connected back then. We used to go to concerts together and all kinds of crazy stuff. He's a great dude. anyway, he's been bass fishing a whole lot longer than I have. It has definitely taught me a lot. And he's just got a great sense of humor. He's just a quality dude. Anytime I've ever fished with him, I've always had a blast. I need to make it a point to do this more often. Anyway, I want to tell you, buckle up. This episode is amazing. It clocks in at about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So, but I'm telling you, I cut about an hour out of all kinds of stuff. Now, a little bit of a heads up. There were some connectivity issues with Zoom. He had dropped out and then had reconnected. We got back on track. I edited the majority of that stuff out together. So if there's anything that seems like it's a little bit off, like the audio quality has changed or something's been sounds a little bit different to you, that is more than likely exactly what the problem is, exactly what's going on. It's the fact that it was a dropout and it's a different connection. So just, please just deal with that the best that you can. There's one point where it just got so to the point where we referenced it in here. You'll see. I think this is a great discussion right here. This conversation, it actually sort of spawned a really great idea, something that I did in a previous podcast a long time ago, but I had never thought about it, and I didn't realize how much of a resource Shawn could be for some really, really, really great stuff. I'm going to give you guys a suggestion right now. Do yourselves a favor, and if you don't have a couple hours to sink into this podcast right now, start and stop it. You listen for a little bit and then come back to it. That's the beauty about podcasting. It's not a live sort of platform. Start and stop it if you need to, but it's worth it. Listen to it all the way to the end. Shawn is a really, really fantastic guy. Just one of the, I say this phrase a lot, good people. He is one of the most highest tier quality of human beings I have ever met. Fantastic guy and has a wealth of knowledge, though he really, really does undersell what he's bringing to the table. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's going to be really, really good. Somebody trying to slide into my DMs.
Yeah, somebody flushed the toilet. What's up, brother?
How you doing, dude? You shaved the beard.
Dude, I didn't tell you what happened.
No? Oh, there's a story?
Yeah, it's a shameful one, too.
Oh, God. Lay it on me. What you got?
I went to Savers one day. I was getting getting frames for work, to put up some of the stuff we had.
Yep.
And I didn't find frames, but I did find an Indiana Jones 3 DVD box set. So I'm like, oh, that's great. and a couple video games and a CD. So I walk up to the counter, and the girl who was working there, I mean, very obviously stripped. Like, there was no joke. Like, she paid a lot of money for her chest. And she looks at me and she goes, "Oh, hey, that's it." I go, "Yep." She goes, $15. I go, "Okay, great." She goes, "Oh, I forgot your discount." I'm looking at her. I go, "For military?" She goes, "Well, no, you're over 55, right?" And I go, "Oh,
wow. Oh my God, dude. Really?"
I'm like, I'm 42, and she's, this girl's like 20. She's looking at me like 42 equals 100. It doesn't matter to her, And I look at her. I go, "All right, I'll take the discount."
That is freaking bananas. That is awful, man.
So one of my buddies comes over and he's like, "Oh man, sweet. You got the Indiana Jones box set." I go, "Yeah." He goes,
and what a price.
He goes, "What? Oh, it was, individually it says like $8 on it."
Yep.
He goes, $8. I go, "Incorrect. $8 minus 30% senior discount." He goes, "What?" And I told him the story. He goes, "Oh, that's awful."
Oh, that is terrible, dude. That's like the worst possible thing in the world that can happen.
Yeah,
oh my God, man.
Yeah.
Oh man. So I'm going to do, I use these products in all of my podcasts. They're called pod decks. And what they are is they're like, it's kind of like a cool, interesting way to kind of gamify everything. So I always start with like a question like from these as just a warm up. And if it's a question that's a flop, I won't use it. I'll just edit it out. Because that's the thing. Like a lot of this stuff, I'll just edit, accordingly, whether or not it lands or not. So I got 4 colors. I got green, black, blue, and red. Pick a color.
Black.
Black. Going black. Got to keep it metal. Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, nice. Nile. What would be your best day ever? Like what would be your best day ever? Fishing or not?
I'd get up early. I'd do a lot of fishing. I'd catch some decent fish. I'd come home, spend some time with the family, and that'd be my day.
I hear you.
Pretty simple.
I think that's pretty much all anybody wants, especially anybody who's going to listen to this show. I think that's all they want. Good day of fishing, nice relaxing day with the family, no stress, no BS, nothing like that. I think that's all you can really ask for. Tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me about how you got interested in fishing. And also because you more than myself for sure are like really, really, really like I would say more of a schooled angler, like with more experience on the water and definitely more detail oriented, like your journals and stuff like that. So share a little bit about like some of like how you got into that, how you discovered bass fishing at that level.
Sure. So as a kid, I grew up the hill from Bay State, Chicopee.
Yep.
Right on the Springfield Chicopee line. And we had a small pond there that has since been bulldozed. I mean, that thing got bulldozed probably about 20 years ago.
Yep.
And occasionally, my parents or my mom or my dad would walk us over there, throw a line out. I don't think we ever caught anything there, but that kind of ignited things. And then we moved over to the falls in the end of the 80s, the Chicopee Falls area. So that gave me access to the river. So that, all the neighborhood kids that we hung out with, everyone had a fishing rod. Everyone went down to the river, different names for different parts. I mean, that really, I had access from, it's a little bit up the hill, but almost, Crestwood Street where the old Friendlies was, the Crestwood and East Street.
Yeah.
All the way down there to, I mean, legitimately into Springfield to where, Monsanto and the fire department academy are.
Oh yeah.
So, any day of the week during the summer in the early 90s, even into high school, I could be waist deep in the river, wading around, catching smallmouth, catching largemouth, catching pickerel, you name it.
Yeah.
And then, my fishing kind of took a back seat when college came around, and then I tried to pick it up here and there, and then I joined the military, and I was gone for years, but I fished wherever I was. It wasn't intense, but, probably around 2005, I think I got my first kayak.
Yeah.
And that was, it was an old Pelican recreational kayak. It was little. It was like, God, maybe 7 feet long. I can't even remember. And I cut a hole in it for the tackle because it had no space for anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
Was it a sit inside?
No, it was a sit on top. I never had a sit inside. No, safety wise, I don't like my legs being covered up.
Oh yeah.
Just in case the thing turns over, I want to be free. I most of the time, and I recommend this to anyone who's got are getting a kayak or getting into the market, I mean, the first thing you should do is wait till the water warms up.
Yeah.
Go out on your favorite lake with no gear, tip the thing and climb back into it for safety.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's the way to go about it. So 2005, I think I bought that one. And then my next kayak, I think I started a trend with this. I pick up a lot of kayaks on Craigslist.
Mm-hmm.
You find them used. Kayaks generally last forever. You can check out the hull, see if there's any damage, and go from there. My next kayak was a kayak made for larger folks. As you know, I'm a tall guy, so
yep.
I had a Cobra Fish and Dive, which was a huge kayak. It was 36 inches across. It was bright yellow. It was big enough that it actually inside the hull you could store scuba tanks if you needed to.
Really?
So yeah, it's an immense kayak. That kayak has since been retired to my in-laws cabin in Minnesota. We drove it out there one year.
Nice.
My third kayak, which I still have, is a Native Ultimate, which is kind of a hybrid between a sit-on-top kayak and a canoe.
Yep.
And I have one for me, one for my son. The oldest one, my youngest son inherited my oldest kayak, and I have a newer one that I purchased last year, fishing model, which I'm loving to death right now. And I purchased another used one for my wife and oldest son in case they want to get out.
That's awesome.
Once the kayaking took a hold, and then somewhere around 2007, I really started paying attention to what I was doing.
Yep.
And honestly, you've seen my fishing log. It's a pretty immense database, but I try to keep it with one thing in mind. And I heard you and Paul. Was it Paul, your last guest?
Yep. Yeah,
Paul. You and Paul were talking about it a little bit about lures designed to catch fishermen.
Oh yeah.
So I always kept that in mind. I mean, I don't like overloading a kayak with tackle that I'm out there not using, spending the money on it.
Yep.
I mean, you can go to, name a retail outlet. You can go and buy as much tackle as you want, anytime you want. And, you don't know if some of those lures are designed to mimic some sort of forage that's found only in the Southeast or only in
exactly.
You don't know. Not that it's not going to catch, fish around here. Fish will bite anything.
Oh, for
but
sure.
Will it catch stuff consistently? We know we have, bluegills, perch, crawdads.
Yep.
Some bodies of water have herring and alewives in them. Stuff like that. Everybody pretty much has shiners, golden or
absolutely.
emerald.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can just mimic that stuff. And I kind of whittled down from there, and I really focused with that database on what I was actually catching fish with my style. And, that's going to be different for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
Here's the best example is I am just completely stubborn. I refuse to drop shot. I refuse to. It's just too slow of a fishing method for me, and I just don't like doing it. So I don't own any drop shotting equipment. And I probably won't.
Well, and the thing is, it's funny that like you talk about what you carry on a yak. I feel like kayak fishing and bank fishing has one very, very, very significant common thread, and that's you need to be versatile, because whether you're paddling from one spot to the other or you're walking along trails, you need to have confidence in the tackle that you're bringing and the technique. So you've got to be able to at least have that readily available. You gotta carry the stuff that works. And that's one thing. I remember when we first had gone out, you were taking notes about all kinds of stuff, factors that I never would have even considered, just to kind of have that knowledge to go back on, which I thought was freaking amazing. But yeah, I think versatility is the key thing that everybody needs, or that kayak and bank anglers at least kind of share.
Yeah, and I mean, compared to what the amount of gear you can bring on a bass boat.
Oh Jesus!
Or even a well modified John boat.
Yep.
And I mean, you and I know we're not getting any younger.
Oh no.
I mean, even with a kayak, you overload it. You start you have to start thinking about, well, how much gear am I loading in, loading out? How heavy is it? I'm getting I don't want to throw 100-pound kayak on top of a ladder rack. I try to go with my, I just load into the bed of my truck.
Yep.
So the less I have to lift that, 3 feet or 3.5 feet, whatever it is off the ground, the better I am for my back and knees.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that to this point now you see some of the pedal kayaks and kayaks that have trolling motors built in, and they don't even bother loading it in and out. They'll throw right on a trailer.
Yep.
And I'm trying to minimize cost too. I don't want to pay for a trailer.
So, and then you got to worry about too, like when it comes to lugging around a trailer, like I thought about the same thing. I had the family convinced like, oh yeah, everybody should get kayaks. We'll get a kayak trailer. We can put 4 of them on, no problem. And then I'm like, but if I'm going to go and lug that around, now I've got to manage the trailer. I've got to store the kayaks that I'm not using and then bring that out. It's just like, it's almost, it's crazy to kind of deal with. I'll tell you what, I saw, what was it? Old Town has some kayaks that they work with Minn Kota. They've got trolling motors in. They look amazing. I would consider as somebody, instead of even modifying a John boat, I would consider looking into one of these suckers. They're absolutely, I mean, they come at a hefty price tag. I think they're like $3,500. But
they're pricey.
I know that the Minn Kota motors that they're using go like $1,600 alone. So it's like, I mean, I don't know. I think it could be pretty badass as far as, I just love the idea you have a spot lock on a kayak.
Yeah, and the thing you have to think about with motors too, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, please double check on this, but if you have a trolling motor on a boat, whether it's a kayak or a John boat, you got to register that.
You do have to register it. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I mentioned having my oldest kayak up in Minnesota, and Minnesota doesn't play games with their waters. So even watercraft like kayaks and stand-up paddle boards, you have to register there, whether they have a motor or not. So again, there's costs involved. It always comes down to me, for me, what am I paying for? What's the benefit? I try to be as cost effective as possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's with lures, whether it's the boats, whether it's, you name it, I try to be as cost effective as possible.
Oh yeah. So, if you can keep from wasting money, I mean, why wouldn't you? It's one thing if it's a convenience factor, and you're like, okay, so I'm spending a little bit more, but it's like, I'm getting what I need without having to put in whatever effort. That's fine. But especially like when it comes to a decision like what you're going to run for, what you're going to choose to use for a watercraft, if at all, and how you're going to transport it, that kind of stuff all comes into play.
Exactly.
I forget the guy's name. I saw a YouTube video about owning a bass boat. And this is a guy who does tournament fishing. He's got a bass boat. I forget how much, like a crazy amount of money he put into this thing. But he broke down the expenses, not just, the gas or the, to insure it or anything else, but like he actually built a garage to house it. So that, he's like, I'm making this kind of investment. I'm putting all of this is factoring in together. And he's got a financial background. And he goes, as somebody who works in finance, I can tell you doing this is the worst financial decision you're ever going to make in your life. That said, I would 100% do it again if I had to. He's just like, you just, there's some things you just have to, kind of realize. But he's like, it's just the amount that of money that owning a boat can cost you, especially with something of like that type of caliber, like a 21 foot bass boat, with like a 250 horsepower engine, you're burning through fuel like crazy. The fuel the truck to get it to the ramp, you got to consider as well.
The trailer is going to cost money. I mean, you have to get the trailer insured too, right?
I think that varies state to state. But I mean, if nothing else, you got to register it, and I know you have to pay an excise for it in Mass.
Great. Yeah, there's more costs.
Yep, and
then if the trailer goes, if you have a problem with the wheel, that's something else to fix. I mean, like I said, I try to keep it simple.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So, and that's the other thing too. It's like you've fished a lot of areas. I know there's a handful of states that you've fished in. So you've got a lot more experience than most of the anglers in my network, as far as like different parts of the country, which is pretty crazy. Have you ever fished you haven't fished for peacock bass in Florida or anything like that, have you?
I have not. No. I mean, most of my experience outside of Mass. I'll start smallest amount of experience to the largest. I have kids, so we go to Florida every 2-3 years, whatever it is, whenever we get a chance. We haven't gone in quite some time, but usually during our vacation, if we go, Disney or whatever, I always try to make sure that I take a day and get a guide. And I take a completely different approach than I think most people do when I get a guide. When you get a guide, they're kind of conditioned. And I've heard it from friends who have gotten guides who kind of didn't know what they were getting into going in. A lot of people just expect that you're going to go out and you're going to catch all these fish.
Exactly.
And I walk in there and saying, dude, I don't care if we don't catch anything. Like, let's BS. I'm taking a personal day here from the craziness of Disney or wherever we're at. And I'm taking a day. Let's go out, or half day or whatever it is, and let's have some fun. Generally, that relaxes the guides. So there was one, the first time I did this was, man, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago.
Yep.
The kids were real young. And I took a day and I went and got just the charters that are available at Disney. And we went zipping around this one lake. We were actually at the, I think it was the entrance to Universal. The big bodies of water at Disney have one, cove or whatever, right there at the entrance to Universal. And I apologize, I'm not looking at a map or anything, but I just remember an entrance to one of the theme parks being right there, and I thought it was Universal. And we started there, and it was 3 or 4 hours. I think it was 4 hours. We didn't catch anything on the way back for maybe an hour. And we were just BSing, and I told him, like I said, I'm just taking a day off.
Yeah.
And I finally hooked into a bass. It wasn't big, 15, 16 inch long, not even 2 pounds. And I heard him from the back of the boat go, "Oh, thank God." I go, "Did you just thank God that I caught a 2-pound fish?" He said, "Yeah." He goes, "I was going to feel real bad if we didn't get anything." I mean, I think a cold front moved in the night before. I'm like, man, I told you not to worry about it. It's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and those guys, I feel like the pressure's on for them because, they want to, they're sort of acting as like the liaison for that area and the waters. So they obviously want, the people that they're guiding to have the best experience possible. But I can definitely see. Yeah, absolutely.
And to contrast that, a friend of mine had told me he had gotten a guide in the Midwest.
Yep.
And kind of said a few things to the guide about, well, I want to catch bigger fish and this and that. And I'm like, dude, you don't say that to guides. I mean, if I were the guide, I would have brought you right to the, where I could find the smallest bluegills on the lake. And,
that is what we got.
Yeah, exactly. Because he was kind of a jerk about it. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way.
It's not like they're crafting the experience. All they're really able to do is just utilize their wisdom. They're not going to catch them every time, Absolutely.
As far as Florida goes, again, I think I've got, like I said, I got guides, 3-4 times.
Yep.
Tops in my life. But there was one really funny story I have about this. I ended up getting a guide. We didn't stay at Disney one year. We stayed off campus. I don't know if we got a condo or something, split it with my parents, whatever. So I looked up local guide services and I found one guy and his reviews were good. So I said, okay. I gave him a call and said, okay, could you mind picking me up? We don't have a vehicle. So he picked me up in the parking lot of the grocery store across from where we were staying. He asked me, he said, where do you want to fish? I said, man, I'm your easiest customer. Take me wherever. And he goes, okay, we'll go to Kissimmee. Now, I didn't know this. It wasn't like broadcast all over his webpage, but he had fished a lot of the regional qualifier stuff for BASS. So this guy was a pro. He was a guide, and he did the guide full-time stuff. He did the guiding full-time and did the tournaments on the side. Yep. So the stories this guy had were phenomenal.
Oh, I'm sure they were.
Yeah, he was telling me that he had a client from the Middle East that had a lot of money, and the guy would just get in the boat and he just wanted to drive. And then he would take everyone out for Burger King afterwards. I said, well, that's all right. I started laughing at that. And then when we got to talking a little bit more and he asked where I was from, I said, well, I'm from Massachusetts. We had just gotten into the opening of one of the whatever lake we were on in the chain. And he said, well, you're not going to freak out, are you? And I'm looking at him going, why would I freak out? What experiences have you had with Massachusetts people? And he goes, let me tell you. He goes, you see that house over there? And it had a long, really, really long dock on it. I don't know, 50 to 75 feet. And at the end of it, there was a big statue. And as we got closer, it was a bronze statue of Shaquille O'Neal. And he goes, that's Shaq's house. I go, oh, no kidding. That's awesome. Right next door, that used to be Johnny Damon's house. I said, well, that's cool. And that's when he's looking at me, and I go, what's the matter? And he goes, well, I had 2 groups of guys from Boston come down. And
I get it.
and it was right after Damon left for the Yankees.
Yep.
And, he did the same thing. He said, well, there's Shaq's house, and that's Johnny Damon's house. And he actually said he had a second boat come in. He had called another one of his guide buddies because his party had like 6 people in it. He goes, the minute he said that Johnny Damon's house was right there, all of the party like stopped what they were doing and stared at the house. And one of them, I guess, rather loudly exclaimed, he better not come out on his dock. I'll throw him a beating or something.
That sounds like a Boston fan, though.
Yeah, well, I was laughing. I said, yeah, that was a time. I mean, that was a big betrayal. Johnny Damon was the second coming here, and he said, oh, yeah, he goes, these guys were just all stereotypical. He said, everyone was wearing either a Bruins, Patriots, or Celtics jersey, all chomping on cigars. I said, yeah, well, it happens. That's what we wear up here.
Stereotypes for a reason, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that is too much, man.
The other 2 places that I spend a lot of time in across the country, Minnesota. Again, my in-laws have a cabin up north, which is phenomenal.
Yep.
And Oklahoma. I spent a lot of time in Oklahoma for work, and lucked out that I had a mentor and friend down there who had his own private bass pond. Oh, that he had a little bit of a valley in his backyard. He's got a huge amount of acreage, and he had a stream running through it, and he dammed it up on one end, flooded it, cut down I think like 75 trees into it, and then stocked it with bass fingerlings one year.
Yep.
I think I forget the number. I think it was 1,600 fingerlings he put in there, and out of that 1,600, 400 were tiger bass, which are a hybrid between northern and southern strain largemouth.
Yep.
So they get as big as southern, and they're as violent as northern.
Oh wow.
So over the 3 or 4 years I fished with him, whenever I would go down there, and he was a great guy. He always let me keep my gear there in his garage. Garage had a few too many brown recluses and copperheads in it, but that's stories.
Yeah.
I had his pond record for about 3 years, so he was not pleased with that a Yankee came down and had his pond record. So the first year I was down there, he took me out on the boat. He had a bass boat there, and he absolutely threw me a beating using jigs. And I did not know how to use jigs. It was a big weak point for me. I didn't know how to use them. And after, I don't know, there was one morning we went out, it was cloudy and rainy, and he caught, I think it was like a 5, a 6, and a 4 right in a row.
Oh, wow.
Maybe a 7. It was just a beating. After the third one, I said, what are you doing? Like, how can I learn this? And by my second or third trip down there, between his, mentorship and his tutelage and me reading up more on the subject, I made sure I was ready to rock. And that next trip, I caught an 8.0 and an 8.4.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. So, and every time I continued to go down there, it was very rare for me not to catch a 6 or a 7.
Were these tigers?
No. Well, we don't know.
Oh, okay.
I mean, yeah, I think he said the pond was created in 2010. I didn't start going there until 2014.
All right. Okay.
So, I mean, some of them could be. He also said he made a mistake that he threw channel cats in there. He had a secondary pond where the channel cats were, and I don't know how the channel cats got from one pond to the other. Maybe he had a few drinks one night. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I throw the channel, but he said the channel cats might have put a ding in the population, but the ones that are there, I mean, it's enormous. Those fish are nuts, and the pond's not even that big. It's only like 20 acres.
It's a lot of fish for a pond that size.
I tell you what, those days were great. I mean, it's really weird. Those fish had a tendency I didn't see a lot up north, where, we generally get the good morning and, the dawn and dusk bites.
Yeah.
Man, those largemouth in Oklahoma, they love to have lunch. So I remember there was one trip I had, and again, I was down there for schooling for work.
Yep.
I was working, I got put on the night shift. My class was on the night shift. So 3 to 11 or whatever it was. And I would just wake up at like 7, have breakfast, go to the gym, and immediately get in the car and drive to his house. Took 45 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
I would fish until 1 o'clock, turn around, drive back, take a shower, and go to work. And it was just amazing what would happen during, the noontime hours. They would just turn on for an hour. Yeah, it was great.
Uh-huh. And it's like that consistently, huh?
I mean, look, southern largemouth are really very, very susceptible to changes in pressure, I think, a lot more than northern largemouth. You know, we get a cold front up here. I mean, generally those fish are kind of back to normal in a day or two. I mean, those southern largemouth, they just pout for like, I mean, you get a bad cold front, the fishing shut down for like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I've heard they're moody.
Yeah, and he was actually, you know, my mentor there was actually, you know, contemplating if he'd thrown too much bait in there where they weren't taking lures, because he had a population of threadfin shad, crappie, bluegills, you name it. He threw it in there. The crawfish in there were like small lobsters.
Yeah.
You know, he actually ended up having a problem where they were burrowing into his dam and causing some small leaks. So, I mean, the
crawfish,
fish,
really?
Yeah. Well, they got different species of crawfish down there. Yeah. They were just enormous. So yeah, I could see if a couple hundred of them did that, it could happen, but
damn, that's crazy.
Those were well-fed fish.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard that before, that if there's too much in there for bait, then you're going to have that much more of a difficult time getting them to eat an artificial lure, because quite literally, like, the hunger isn't there. You know, it's the land of the plenty, you know, so... And then you're relying on times like the spring and the fall when they're feeding up, or I should say the fall, at least up north, where, you know, they're feeding up for changes in the year, and then you know, the bait, they put a hurting on that. That's crazy, man. What's your favorite season to fish? Like, I mean, mainly in New England. Like, what's your favorite season up here to fish?
You know, I actually have a kind of a funky answer to that, because I heard you ask Paul that on the last show, and it was fresh in my mind, because part of that database that I keep, I was kind of looking at months. You know, I keep a separate page, a separate tab, just devoted to looking at months, and, you know, how many fish do I catch in Massachusetts in January? How many largemouth in February, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized, well, a fish does not read a calendar. A fish doesn't know what calendar is, but a fish knows how to react to temperatures. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I scaled it up and down, looking at temperatures in 5-degree increments in spring, and going from spring into summer into fall, by our, you know, human seasons.
Yep.
And I'm kind of amazed at what I saw. It was I had a preconception going in. It turned out to be a little bit of a misconception, because when I did that, you could see, you know, pre-spawn and then a post-spawn drop at certain temperatures, and then just a nice climb and a drop when it went back into winter. It was just really neat to see that. So I don't know if I really have one. I mean, I could tell you one I hate: the dead of winter.
Yeah, the dead of winter.
It's iced over and I can't fish.
Yep.
Speaking of ice fishing, I know we tried to get together this year, and I didn't have any local ice. I mean, I had to go up to the Berkshires a couple times, and that was on invite. So
this is weird. Done that, but. Yeah, this winter was a weird winter. It was I wouldn't say safe ice anywhere locally to where we live.
An hour drive minimum. I mean, it was rough. It was a very mild winter. I mean, a lot of people, myself included, aren't going to complain about that, because, you know, I was kayaking February this year.
That early?
Yeah.
Holy shit!
I drove out to the Cape. Cape's always open.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really don't have one, man. There's highs and lows to every season. You know, It's, you know, even in the dead of summer, you know, instead of sitting around in the kayak at noon frying, I might not go fishing during the day, but all of a sudden at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I'm getting the stuff ready, and then I don't get home till 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, it's nice and cool out. I'm nice fishing, you know, night fishing. There's nobody out, you know, with recreational lakes. Nobody's out there being a danger to anybody around them.
Yeah. That's what's nice with, like in the summer, you know, when you can get out there, even just early. I'm usually up and out about 3:30 in the morning, and you know, get my stuff together, kind of take it easy getting out there. And then, you know, I'll be up about an hour before, and I'll just fish right through dawn, you know, as the sun comes up. And it works out really good. I hate being out there in the summertime, like when the sun's way up. I can't do it. It's just, it's crazy. Let alone the fact that you just burn like a son of a bitch. Latest I'll go in the summer is about 10 a.m. I think statistically, if you look at it and you say, what's the, you know, if you take a look back and analyze the year, there probably isn't necessarily a best season per se. It's probably got more to do with like the lunar cycle and, you know, the weather in general than it does necessarily any one specific like 3-month season.
Yeah, I mean, water temperature is going to play a huge part. So that's really what I look at a lot. I mean, obviously, weather patterns are going to change year by year, but during the year, during every year, the water is going to be cold, warm up, and cool down. And it's going to do that every year. You never know what you're going to get for weather, but the water is going to be cold, then it's going to be warm, and then it's going to be cold again.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of track that. I mean, that's kind of a neat thing to look at. But yeah, I mean, as far as seasons go, when you talk about with what other fishermen bring to the game and, recreational users. Yeah, I mean, you're going to see a big bump because everyone's excited about the spring. Everyone's got cabin fever. Everyone gets out. There's a lot of people, recreational fishermen and competitive fishermen all get out in the spring. And then kind of drops a little bit in the summer. I mean, people are out, but they don't have that initial excitement like a lot of people do in the spring. And then, in the fall, the minute football season hits, Sundays the waters are bare again. It's wonderful.
It really
Nobody's
is.
out there.
Isn't it great? I love it. As a guy who doesn't care about sports at all, I love sports for that. Like once football season kicks off, you're like, oh, this is great. September was awesome. October was great, Yeah.
The waters really, really empty out. The recreational boaters, they're gone. And, then you kind of find out, who's really super serious about fishing because those guys are out there, every week.
Yep.
As much as they can. Football is great, but I'd rather be out doing something than watching somebody else do something. That's just me.
Absolutely.
The last thing I was going to kind of go into was with the areas of the country I fished. Minnesota is like a second home at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We go up there every year with relatives there, and my in-laws have a beautiful cabin that's actually being rebuilt right now. The older cabin was built, I guess, in the 70s, and the family's gotten bigger and the cabin's gotten older. Really never got any upgrades, so they bulldozed it this past fall and rebuilt it, and it's going to be ready for this summer.
That's awesome.
So we're excited about that, and it's on a chain of lakes that does get a ton of recreational usage. But I mean, the amount of information that I really, or the amount of not only just techniques, but really watching other anglers, being on a cabin and seeing people kind of just drift up and do their thing around a dock or how they approach a certain weed line. Minnesota's got, in particular, this lake right in front of the house has a large native rice paddy. There's just rice stalks everywhere.
Oh, really?
So that's a whole new structure to fish around. It's not like, the reeds and the weeds and the various things we have around here. I mean, rice paddy's it's a whole different ball game. Yeah, it's different. So, when I talk about, I learned a few things in Florida here and there, and then Oklahoma, I learned, I took away, my plastic and jig use is straight out of Oklahoma. Like I really wasn't big on plastics and jigs before I went to Oklahoma. But when I talk about Minnesota, really running weed lines and doing various things with power fishing, with crankbaits, spinnerbaits. Not only do you have decent largemouth up there, it's Minnesota. They have a shorter growing season than us. When we're already well into the swing of things in May, and the fish are, depending on the water temperature, the fish may be in some sort of stage of spawning. They're still iced up in the middle of May where they're at in Minnesota. So it's
really? They're that far up? Because I've heard I've heard people say Minnesota is very much like Hoth.
I don't like going there in the winter. But no, in the summer they have a much shorter growing season for the fish, and then on top of that, those lakes are all full of northern pike and bowfin, so they've got to deal with that and walleye too. So, when I really, I think the biggest thing I learned from there is, my kids were really young and I couldn't just be out on the boat all day. The kids couldn't take care of themselves when they were, under 5 and under.
Yeah, exactly. Damn it.
I had the ability to go out at night and fish off the dock just to get it, an hour or two in. And I should say this too, the mosquitoes are horrific up there. And that's the first I had to go out at night in the middle of the summer wearing a sweatshirt, jeans, long socks, and a mosquito net just to keep them off me. It was horrible. They don't care about bug spray. They don't care about DEET.
Really?
So Yeah, those mosquitoes are hellish. They are bad. I cannot say enough bad things about the mosquitoes in Minnesota. When I was out there at night,
so bad. Huh.
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, it's awful. Like they make jokes about it up there. Like you can go through the airports and find, any sort of, tchotchke, whatever, a shot glass, a pint glass, and have a picture of a mosquito and just says Minnesota State bird on it. It's all over the place.
No shit.
But at night, what I found was, and this kind of taught me how to really assess like pressured lakes with recreational traffic during the day. Man, the night bite was so hot there. So those fish would just come right into shores and right into the shoreline. I mean, I'm talking 2 to 3 feet away from the shore, and just they would eat anything that would move.
Yeah.
So anything would work there. I mean, name your standard night fishing fare. Spinnerbaits, bladed jigs, Senkos, you name it. It was no joke. I think the first night I did it, I was laughing a half hour in because it was shooting fish in a barrel, and all those fish were 15, 16, 17 inches long. And it was crazy.
No kidding.
So I really learned to night fish out there. And then of course in the daytime, working deep weed edges the more you go out and fish and see different parts of country, if you're able to, if you're paying attention, it'll teach you things. So it's good. And one other side trip that I'd like to make mention of that I had an absolute blast on, with being in the military. I had a trip, down to West Virginia one year, and
all right.
Yeah, it was a week-long trip, and I took one of my troops with me, and we got on the plane, and I had kind of a bigger bag. He said, "What are we doing with that bag?" And I said, "Oh, wait till you see." And I opened it up, and we got there, and I brought 2 fishing rods, 2 collapsible fishing rods. I brought a bait caster for myself and a spinning rod for him.
Nice.
And the whole week, every day after work, all we did was get him a 6-pack of beer and go. We were waiting in the Shenandoah River for smallmouth for a week. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to take advantage if I go somewhere of fishing somewhere new and seeing what I can do.
Yeah, it's funny because I had, before this whole quarantine thing kind of happened, I had a trip planned for Vegas in the end of March, the last week of March. I would have been there for the bar nightclub show and then for TriviaCon. And my goal, I had a day off. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna bass fish in the desert. We're gonna find. I looked up a couple of areas where there were small ponds and lakes at parks. And I was getting, all set to get my license and everything. It was like $80 for like a 3-day, like a weekender's license. Crazy expensive. Yep. But I'm like, no, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to go for it. And I found a YouTuber who was from New Hampshire, and he did a video fishing in Vegas as well. And I was like, just to give it a shot, I'll go and take a look at it. And I was just about to buy a collapsible spinning combo and pack it all up. And then this whole thing happened, and everything got pushed back to like October now. So I don't know. We'll see how that works. But yeah, I agree with you absolutely. If you're out of town and you can, it is 100% worth trying to get out to some local water and fish and use it as an educational point if possible. You don't use any electronics, do you?
I do.
Oh, you do?
All
okay.
Yeah, I don't go overboard with it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep it on yet right now. I mean, I saw some of the new sonars that are coming out are insane. I mean, they're insane. So I've been looking at some of the newer models, but for now I just keep a small. I have a small Lowrance that I just put it back on the boat. Yeah, I got I won a fish finder of all things at a Veterans Day raffle like 2 years ago, and it was a color one. It had side scan. I said, "Oh, that's great."
Yeah, and
I put it on my boat, and then the one downfall to it was the night setting was awful. So it was either burning your retinas out at midnight, or you couldn't see it, and that drove me nuts. So I just went back to my older one. I just reinstalled it maybe a month ago. But I don't go overboard with it. Again, I try to keep it light. I did find a company that makes, instead of the those big 12-volt batteries that weigh a couple pounds, which man, I unloaded my boat one night and was taking stuff out of the backseat of my car, and I had the battery on the floor, and I don't know if I grabbed the net and it was on the net, but that thing landed on my foot one day, and my foot was swollen for a week.
Oh, I believe it. They're heavier than hell.
Yeah, that was painful.
That's no
so there's companies now that make little tiny 12-volt batteries that are, the size of a wallet, and it goes right with my, keeping it light and being as versatile and quick as possible to get a boat in and out of the water.
Oh yeah, keep it compact so you don't lose the accessibility of being able to drop a kayak wherever you are.
Yep. And those batteries were they're heavy, they're bulky. Mm-hmm. It adds more weight to the kayak. I don't think I ever had a problem with one performance-wise, but if you can find something lighter and smaller, why not?
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And the thing is, the smaller, lighter ones, you could probably even, use the second one and then use a solar charger if you ever had to change them out. It's easier to carry a backup with them being so small. No, that definitely makes sense. That's one thing I've always sort of, I have never really understood how a lot, like the one thing people are talking about right now that's a big buzz is Panoptics. That's a big thing I've heard a lot of people talk about, like the new Panoptics. Like, I don't know if that's specifically a side imaging, but I think the idea is that it basically gives you a little bit more of a not so much a high def, but a little bit more of a like a way to sort of pinpoint what's happening under the boat.
It's almost, you'll have to excuse me, I'm not going to talk like an expert on this, but from what I've read on it, it looks like you're looking down completely in almost 360 degrees. Yeah. You're getting that kind of a scan.
Yep.
And you can tell the difference between a fish and a piece of structure by how the shadow is. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not an expert. I don't have one, but that's when I said yet, I've been looking at those going, ooh, that's something I might want to play with. But I mean, when you look at those systems, you're talking in the thousands of dollars. So,
oh yeah,
it's one of those things where do you want a sonar system that's worth more than your boat? I mean, some people do. I don't know if I do or not yet.
Yeah, it's a big decision to kind of make. I had thrown around the idea, Deeper makes a newer, an updated version of their fish finder, and I had thrown around the idea of just getting my hands on one of those, just so that right now, like. If you were to take the information in my brain of the water that I fish and what that image of what's happening under the water looks like, it would look like something from Narnia. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? It's like you just kind of are guessing unless you can actually see something, under the water. Like, you can see where, like, there's a piece of a branch that comes up or see some timber. But even then, you only have so much insight as what's going on, especially when it comes to grass. It's so hard unless it's like crystal clear water and you're right on top of it looking down. It's so hard to see all that stuff.
Well, there's some things you can do with that. I mean, like I love using lipless crankbaits. I mean, a lot of people use them in the spring. I use them year round. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I try to tell people if I'm out there and they're learning to use them, kind of under my watch, I'll say, well, if you have a map, a topo map, and you know where you're sitting, and the topo map is saying that the water is, let's say, 6 feet deep. All right. Yep. You can kind of guess the fall rate. All right. Maybe find a clear area, see how long it takes, for the thing to hit bottom. So if it takes 5, 6 seconds, whatever, 4 seconds, do the math on that. And then if you let it sink 2 seconds and it's gone down 2 feet and you hit weeds, you've now painted a picture. Okay. So there's weeds 2 feet under the water. I caught grass right there. It's going to descend as it goes, closer to you. So you can go, well, okay, so that I reeled it a little bit. Maybe I reeled 10 feet in, or, you went 2 cranks and you got 12 feet in. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of thinking about what you're presented with and kind of make an estimate. I mean, and who knows, the first cast where you're trying to find that grass and how deep it is, or trying to get an idea of how deep it is, you might have a tall patch right there. And then the rest of the lake is a foot below that. You never know.
That's true. It could be up on a hump or something, and that could be offsetting it.
You just never know. But like generalities, or for general purpose, throw it out there, let it sink, see how long it takes to get to the bottom. That's your baseline, and go from there.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I started wanting so badly to start to get comfortable fishing with jigs is is because I could then throw them out, and fan cast. And at least if nothing else, for new water, I'll throw a jig and I'll just kind of like drag it along the bottom to get an idea of what the hell's happening, and it'll kind of help a lot as far as like, when I'm making that decision for what I want to throw next.
Yeah. And that's, I know I have several people I fish with that do that. And my counterpoint to that is, well, I'm doing the same thing with, a spinnerbait, a crankbait, a chatterbait, but I'm painting my picture quicker because I'm working it faster.
You're doing it much faster. Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
You know what I mean? So sometimes, and it's something, if you get on a body of water and you know that there's this particular spot that holds fish and you can hit it with a jig or hit it with a plastic and, maybe it takes you 30 to 40 seconds for that retrieve.
Yeah.
Go do it. But if I go to a new body of water, generally the first thing I throw is going to be one of those
a
three
search
things,
bait.
something that's good. Yeah, exactly. Something that's going to come back quick, something I can paint a picture of mentally. And, I don't just throw one color. I'll try a number of different things, to see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had something happen today when I was out that was kind of interesting. I don't know why I decided to throw a buzzbait this morning. Well, it wasn't even like, it was late this morning, but it was cloudy. So it was like, okay, no direct sunlight overhead. We got some cloud cover. And I threw a black and blue buzzbait, and I had the only strike of the entire day on that. And I decided, I was like, okay, well that, he missed it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to follow with a black and blue chatterbait. So I threw that right over there. Could not get him to commit at all. Just couldn't do it. And I walked to the other end of the pond and then started fishing my way back. And before I left, that was the last spot I went back to. Still no dice over there. It was just so freaking cold. But that, I don't know what possessed me to throw that buzzbait. I had it tied on, and I was like, I'm just going to give it a shot over here. We'll see how it works. And I could not believe it was ideal. Real choppy. Yeah. I'm not even sure the proper conditions for throwing a buzzbait. I've heard
wind is always good.
Yeah.
Clouds are always good.
Low light. I mean, top water. That's generally, you don't want to have direct sunlight. I knew I had that going with me.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, that might depend on the water conditions too. I think I know. I know we had spoken. I think I know where I know generally where you were fishing. So
Yeah.
I know the water clarity there is a bit dirty. I don't know. Was it a big fish? Did it look big?
No, I think honestly it was probably about 1.5 pounds to 2 at best.
And that area too, I believe has a breeding population of northerns. Could have been that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was a fierce blow up. I was impressed. I could not believe it. Trailer hook too, and he didn't get it. I was like, son of a bitch.
In that same body of water, but not anywhere close to where you were fishing. I mean, years ago, I remember in the rain throwing a buzzbait around offshore. And I'll remember this was so freaky. There was a pike that came swimming with his head out of the water. I don't know if it was sick or dying, but it wasn't small. And it came from far away. And that was probably the freakish thing. I was probably 10 or 11 or maybe 12.
Really?
I don't know. I just never seen anything like that where, yeah, it was swimming with maybe, 8 inches. Its mouth was open, but it was swimming with its head out of the water. It had to have been sick or dying.
Yeah.
And that body of water, for years and years and years, I had fished it, and I caught plenty of chain pickerel. I mean, they're a given.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to a party at my sister's house one night, and one of her friends' husband or whatever I was talking with about fishing. And he had said, yeah, I was down at that place and I caught a bunch of pike. And I kind of looked at him and said, man, I've been fishing that body of water for years.
Yeah.
There's no pike in there. Even with that one thing, I still didn't confirm it was a pike. I didn't catch that.
Sure. Yeah.
He was like, well, I was there 2 days ago and here's the pictures. And he had handfuls of northern pike through the ice. And I said, wow.
Really?
And the funny thing about that is when the ice thawed about a month later,
Yep.
I was out there. That was the first week I had my fishing dive, the big kayak, and I caught 2 fish that day. The water was 38 degrees. I caught a bass that was just shy of 4 pounds on a crankbait. And with the same crankbait, I caught a 6-pound northern pike. And that's the only time I've ever caught a pike was 2 days after I had that, or whatever it was, a month after I had that conversation with that one guy saying there was pike there. And I denied him. And then Mother Nature told me, no, there's pike in here.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't caught one since there. So
that's bananas. That's a really high pressure area too.
Yeah, well, that whole body of water is now. So
a lot of people. That's a big spot. There is, I'll tell you, there is a couple of. There's one group of people who have been going around. They have a Facebook group now called "Make Massachusetts Fishing Spots Great Again," and they've been going around and dropping trash barrels at some of the more popular spots where people fish. And there's a couple of them that they dropped over there, and they're getting used, which is great. Really, really great. The people are actually using the stuff. Yeah. So
are they picking them up too?
Yeah. I had gone out. I think so. My like little local honey hole where I just like to go and fish, I can't access right now because of the quarantine. So, because it's on a college campus and they're blocking everything off. So I go and I'm going over to this place. I've gotten a little bit more adventurous with, getting off the beaten trail and actually, walking quite a distance in order to find a spot. And I found a few places that I really like over that way. I've been now at least over there once a week for the last 3 weeks. And each time I've gone over there, that barrel has been in various stages of being full. Sometimes it's totally full. Today, when I left on my way out, there was just a few things in there. So people are changing them out.
Huh.
Yeah. I'm pretty impressed. I really was. Although I will tell you what, I probably picked up somebody's discarded, probably about 40 yards of fishing line. Gotta know if they had a spool just explode on them and then decide to leave it there, but that's what it looked like. So I packed all that up and then chucked it in the barrel on my way by. Yeah, freaking.
Well, if no one takes anything from this podcast, they should take litter bugs suck. I mean,
for sure.
It's what's the point? I try to clean up everything that I can. I mean, nowadays it's I hadn't thought about it. I usually when I go out during the summer, I'll bring a plastic bag with me. If I see, a soda can or a beer can lying around or something floating around, I'll grab it and throw it in line definitely. But I haven't touched anything recently because, why would you? I'm not bringing.
Yeah. You want to be as careful as you can for sure.
Yeah, this is where we are in the world right now, I guess.
It's freaking unbelievable, man. What would be your number one confidence bait? That's
kind of moved around over the years.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it has.
I mean, lately.
Yeah, lately.
Lately, I've been throwing a lot of plastic creature baits, and I've really been scoring dividends with them. Yeah. I'm not going to get more into that. I don't want to. Yeah. But over the past 2 years, I've really done well with plastic creature baits.
I like to, when I'm leaning towards soft plastics, I like to go with, like the beaver tail or like that, the bandito bug. That's one that I really like. Like it's just got enough kind of action. It's a good size. Craws always work for me. I need to work on my worm game. I really do.
I mean, honestly, with worms, I don't carry a ton of them. That's why I said when it's bounced back and forth over the years, I mean, every year I'm out there, early and late enough that I always get something on lipless crankbaits are just like one of my favorites.
Yeah.
They're no brainers. You can do as much or as little as you want with them. There's so many different kinds and colors out there. I mean, there's some I have of one particular brand that I love using here. And then in Minnesota, there's a completely another different brand I like using, a different size. But yeah, with creature baits, past couple of years, they've really been good for me. So I can't complain. But lipless crankbaits have too. Bladed jigs, they're right up there too. Bass jigs, that was a tough question.
Yeah, it really is. It's totally a load. Especially, I never even thought about that too. When you start talking about different locations that you fish with any type of regularity at all, they're going to have different bodies of water are going to, especially in like such large sort of variance of location like that. You're talking about could be two completely different tackle setups that you've got that you're taking out for your average day. That is kind of a loaded question.
Well, what I do is, again, with the versatility and not bringing, as much stuff as you can store in a bass boat.
Yep.
I did, again, getting back to your podcast that I listened to yesterday with Paul, when you guys were talking about rod and reel setups. So I try to go minimal.
Yep.
Where I'll only bring 4 rods. And notice I said rods, not combos.
Yeah.
So I have a setup that's heavy for braid. If I want to throw something into weeds, I don't base it on the lures. I don't base it on the fish. I base it on the cover. And that's, and I don't know how many rods you bring with when you walk, but I'm sure at some point or another, somebody has turned to you and said, "You got so many rods for?" And I always have to bite my tongue. And I say, well, it's kind of like golf. You don't want to, you don't want to putt with a driver. I mean, you can, but you're a little more effective if you putt with a putter. You know what I mean?
It's a good analogy.
So I mean, well, people get that, because there's a lot of golfers out there and they know, well, you can putt with a putter. It's really tough to drive with a putter.
Yeah.
Well, the other one, if that doesn't get through, the other analogy I throw out there as well, you can get a screw into a piece of wood with a hammer. It's just a lot easier with a screwdriver.
It's true. It's true. It's funny. I think I mentioned this. I heard this one podcast I listened to, and they were in this one show. They were talking about the 5 rods like every angler should use. And I'll tell you, one of the not the newest, but one of the newest rods that I've combos that I've added in there was I sort of had, when I got into using bait casters, had kind of like taken the camp of like, yep, I don't need any kind of spinning tackle now, and that's not true. 100%. That's what I found. 100% not true. In fact, I would say that probably my most versatile combo is my spinning combo. I would feel 100% comfortable going out and fishing with about like 85% of the tackle that I've got on me at any given time, and using that spinning combo, I could make it happen. But it's true. It's like, what works for some or what works for one person may not necessarily work for everybody else. And there's a lot of like particular taste from each angler that like their own preferences are going to come into faction here. So yeah, 4 rods is ideal if you're going to carry them on a kayak. Or that's what I carry. I carry 4 rods with me.
Again with the asterisk on there, and bringing up spinning tackle. So I have 4 rods. I've got a heavy rod with heavy braid on it and a fast reel, bait caster, and then I have the exact same setup with a heavy fluorocarbon on there, and that's for jigs and honestly timber. Really, it's thrown around in timber. We don't have a ton of lakes with major timber around here.
Yep.
But I think you and I have talked about them. There's 2 or 3 lakes in Mass that the timber is so bad that if you fall out of your boat, you're going to get skewered. And it's no joke. Like, it's dangerous.
Oh yeah.
And of course I'm going to 1, possibly 2 of, I'm going to 2 of them this weekend. So
no kidding.
With the winds and everything. Yeah. Well, I've got an individual tournament on Monday. So it's a 1-on-1 bracket style. So I'm fishing against a guy out east out there. And then there's another one, there's another lake even further out east that I'm going to see that I know has a ton of timber. But that's what I learned in Oklahoma. If you've got timber, your choices really are braid or fluorocarbon.
Yeah.
Mono is not going to handle the abrasion. But what I found is when you've got a tree that's been sunk in the water for God knows how many years, it's not getting petrified. It's getting softer. So when you get a fish on and you're throwing, 50, 65 pound braid, and you get a jig on there, and that fish is pulling the other direction, and you have no give on your drag because you shouldn't at that point. If your braid goes around a tree, it's it's cutting into the tree like a saw.
Oh yeah.
It's going right in.
Yep.
And it's stopping. And that gives those fish just enough leverage to possibly free the hook. Whereas fluorocarbon, you get a strong enough fluorocarbon, it'll wrap right around that tree and you can pull it right back in and won't have any problems.
Yeah.
So I keep those 2 rods right off the bat. They're kind of specialized, but they have their purposes. Now, I bring all these rods with me, and I haven't used my frog rod yet this year. It's just the weeds aren't up. I haven't had a chance to throw it. The third one I bring a medium heavy with a and I heard you guys talking about this, a really slow reel. It's like a 5 to 1 gear ratio. Yeah. With fluorocarbon on that, and that's for that's my workhorse. That's my power fishing rod. I do a ton of stuff with that. Well, what I kind of wanted to talk about when I heard you and Paul talking was it's not so much for me, bringing in the lure at a certain speed.
Yeah.
In the winter, it helps with crankbaits because I do like to go a little slower with them, and I don't have to, slow down to a snail's pace. It's more for catching up when the fish takes off on you. And I learned that in the South, because you won't even feel a hit sometimes from a big bass. And all of a sudden you look in your line, it's been 3 seconds since your lure hit the water, and it's 20 feet over from where it was. You didn't even feel it.
Yeah, they've taken right off. Yeah.
So you've got to have those 7-1s and higher to catch up with them, and get that good hook set. So, and then the fourth combo I bring is kind of funky. I think I'm the only person I know who does this. I found I'm semi-ashamed to say this. I found a really, really cheap Chinese reel company that sells our stuff on Amazon, and their reels are cheap enough that I bought a couple extra, and I keep one on my, at this point, all-time favorite spinning rod. It's lasted for years. It's a great rod. I love it. Every time I try to get a new one, something will happen on the new one, and I'm like, I wish I had that one. I keep putting it back. Now I've just given in. I'm going to use it till it breaks. It's an old original orange carrot stick. I love that rod to death. I can't get rid of it. It just keeps turning up. I keep that spinning rod on there, and I have 3 spools with a light braid, a light fluorocarbon, and a light mono, and I have all different uses for those, but I keep them with me. So, if I want to throw a Ned rig, I can fire that down on the bottom with the fluorocarbon.
Yeah.
If it's weedy and I want to throw the Ned rig, I've got, that's that light braid. If I want to throw some finesse top water, I can throw it on that with the mono.
Yep.
Depending on what it is, but I have that option. I like having all 3, and I just keep the spools with me. So it's, so basically I have 4 rods, but I have the equivalent of 7 reels.
Yeah, that's the thing. I have seen that there are some people that I've seen will take reels that are spooled differently and just change them out. They'll throw them in their kit, and they'll change them out if they need to. And that's not a terrible idea. Today, I actually was the first time I had ever thrown a chatterbait on. I should say I've got a bunch of chatterbaits, but I've been throwing recently the ones that have like the wobble, almost swim type head. It's the EWG hook connects to it with this coil on the backside, so it's got a little extra movement. And I usually am throwing a chatterbait on like a 6.3 to 1 gear ratio reel, but I've got one that's a 7-1. And I've noticed a huge difference. The action just kicks right up with that faster reel. I might be making some changes as to what I use that. Usually that combo I save for jigs and larger Texas rigs. But I think I might start using it for. It might even be great for spinnerbaits too. A little bit quicker, just a little bit faster on the retrieve.
Yeah, if that's, it always comes down to is if you feel comfortable with it and it's working for you, do it. Anything I say during this podcast is great, but I'm not in anyone else's shoes. Like, I know what works for me. Just because I'm throwing a lure on a certain kind of line, on a certain kind of rod, on a certain kind of reel doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
No, because the minute, I can say, it was this temperature, this time of year, I'm leaning heavily on my lipless crankbaits or whatever creature bait or jig I'm throwing. And 2 feet over from me, there's going to be a guy who's ripping out, 20 and 21 inch largemouth on a drop shot. It happens.
Yeah. And that might just be that presentation too. And the confidence that comes with it for that angler. It might just be what it is.
Exactly. And I've just gotten to the point with fishing and myself. I don't deny myself from learning new things. I always try to throw a couple new things in my box, not too many, a couple every year, and say, okay, I'm going to try and apply these and see what I can do. I have my things that I'm confident in, and I roll with them. And if I'm in tournaments, I don't have a problem going down with my own ship. You know what I mean? I go with what brought me to the dance.
Yeah. That's smart. Because then you go with what works, and that's like part of the reason why I started using like Mystery Tackle Box, was so that way I could put myself in this situation where I could be trying different techniques that I've never used, and some of them might just flop. Like right now, I have probably half a dozen swim baits of I'm not saying like soft tail or soft plastic paddle tails. Those are different. I put those in kind of a whole other category, but like either like the soft plastic, the boot tail style swim baits, or I've got a couple of the It's not the bull shad, not the baby bull shad.
Like a jointed hard swim bait.
Yeah, like it's a beautiful swim bait, but I'm like, it's just another one of those things where I won't throw something like that until I'm 100% comfortable with the body of water and the structure around it, because I don't want to just throw, something like that and get it hung up, like because I was ignorant about where I was throwing it. So like I've got a bunch of these things that I've just kind of been sitting on, and eventually I'll start to utilize them. But especially I got this one boot tail. It's like a trout appearance. It's absolutely amazing, and the action in the water is great. But I'm like, I'm not. It's huge. That's the other thing. It's like a 6-inch. It's like a 7-inch boot tail swim bait, and the thing is it just rips. So I got to do a little bit more homework and make sure I'm throwing it on the right stuff. But I'll figure that out. We'll get there one way or the other.
That's where it comes into play of really maintaining, and in my opinion, really maintaining a good solid database. Because what I did was, for the first 3 years of that, you've seen that thing, man. I have I don't know. Let me see. I got it up. I'll give you an exact number. I have, I started this thing in 2009. I recorded every fish I caught plus skunks, because, skunks happen.
Oh yeah.
So I started it fresh in 2009. So this is year, what, 12, 11, 12.
That's crazy.
And I have 4,400 entries, so it's everything from if I got a 3-inch bluegill, I wrote it down. I wrote down what I caught it on, where, when, all the same information. And then 3 years into it, so I think it was 2011 or 12, over the winter, I finally said, okay, I have enough data. I'm going to analyze and see what I can do. Mm-hmm. And again, it was just to save money on lures. So when I looked at all that, I came up with, okay, well, I've caught fish on this lure. Let's see what it is. And I look at the lure, and then I look at the fish, and, okay, I've caught 50 10-inch bass. That's great. It's great to catch fish, and I know that, but do I want that in my tackle box? Is that something I need to keep?
Yeah.
So that helped with me, help me adjust sizes of lures I was buying. So instead of buying, let's say, a jerkbait in 3 different sizes of the same color, now I only went with one, because I knew I might catch fewer fish, but they seem to be bigger.
They would be, they would be more desirable to catch.
Yeah. The funny thing was, over those 3 years, the biggest dilemma I had, it was pretty simple. Like, this sounds like a complex thing, but it really wasn't. I wasn't using thousands of lures. I was using probably 20 or 30 that I was catching fish on. So if I didn't have fish on a lure, I just got rid of it. I was like, okay, that's easy. But the biggest decision that I had at that time, I wasn't throwing chatterbaits a lot for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I had 5 fish over 3 years, but they were all over 3 pounds. So I'm like, well, I'm not catching that many fish, but they're big.
They're performing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kept them, and I obviously benefited from them over the years, but that was pretty funny. There weren't many fish, but they were all decent.
That's a really good point too. It's like when you have that information, because as you're saying that, I'm like, you know what? All the fish I've ever caught on chatterbaits have been at least over 2.5. All of them. That's a pretty good. That's a pretty good. Reason to keep track of records, and that way you kind of know what the hell you're using. For that kind of reason alone, maybe you should throw it a little bit more, or make sure to have them handy.
Yeah, and then you can look at the water bodies that you're catching them on. Well, mm-hmm. Are these water bodies stained in a certain way? Is there a certain kind of grass in there? Is there a certain kind of plant life? Start putting on the Sherlock Holmes hat and pipe and figure out some stuff. And it's really neat to look at. I'm the only person I know who really, really goes nuts with this stuff. Not to say that people don't, but they don't talk about it. I not only talk about it, I advocate it. You're going to find your own path with these things, but I can't write the information down for you. What I mean?
You got to do it on your own. Hey, take the notes, and then you get to have that moment. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, and but it is nice to see, man. All this information I have that I can look at and kind of filter out and say what happened here, what are the similarities, how can I save myself money? So instead of when February or March rolls around or whatever, the local retailer restocks, I don't go in there and say, well, now I want 15 bags of worms that I've never caught anything on, or this one color of worm that I've never caught anything on looks nice. I might do that. I might grab one color, or if something I use that, like this year.
Yep.
This is a great example. There was a certain bait, certain plastic that got discontinued in a particular color by the manufacturer, and I was like livid because I have one particular lake that that I fished that loves this one color. I don't know why. I don't ask questions. I just throw it when I'm there.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I found what I thought was a suitable substitute, at least halfway, and I was probably going to have to take like a garlic marker to it or something to kind of finish the job. And then maybe 2 weeks ago, I got up early for whatever reason. I was on the computer and I did a search for them. I found 4 bags of these plastics in a small bait shop in Indiana that was still open.
Oh, you got to be kidding
me. They shipped them to me. So like, again, I spent the $25 I spent wasn't $25 on stuff that I had no idea if it would work or not.
You knew it was going to work.
In a confidence bait that I know I'll put to good use. And then when those bags are gone, I'm going to be pissed. But
yep.
The manufacturers are making anymore. What can I do?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. How was it when so like you'd mentioned that it was one body of water where this one specific color was just amazing. Was it like just an accident that you happened to throw that in there, or what was it that drew you to the color initially?
Oh man. That gets into more details than I really want, but
I hear you.
It was a color that had worked elsewhere. And I think I threw a crankbait. That was that color that had worked elsewhere, and I got some positive responses from it. And I thought to myself, well, I wonder if that'll work in a plastic, and it did. And I don't know why. Like, if I looked at this lake on base level and said, okay, it's, these are the characteristics of this lake. What other lakes have I fished that are similar characteristics?
Yep.
That wouldn't be my first choice. But just that one day, I had a wild hair going on, and it worked, and it's paid dividends since.
That's the thing.
Literally and figuratively, because I think last year I won a monthly online tournament just going to that body of water and throwing that lure.
No kidding.
So, yeah, it's, we haven't really gotten into like the tournament fishing aspects of what's been going on with kayaks at all. I mean, if you want to go down that road for a little bit, we can.
Yeah,
I got all day.
Let's definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's interesting because it's like that's one of the things I've known a couple of people who do tournaments, and I mean, there's a couple of different schools for tournaments, like the more like larger scale tournaments, and then I've seen recently a lot of these online ones that have been going on too. So, what is it that you primarily do? I do a lot of online. This year, it's been nothing but online. You can't gather any groups.
Yeah. Thankfully, the governor hasn't shut down, state boat ramps or access or anything like that. So people are being careful. I mean, it's not like I'm the only person fishing some of these waters, but everyone's been pretty good about getting in and out and giving each other space and everything.
Yep.
I mean, when I started fishing tournaments, I got invited one when I was in middle school on the Connecticut River, and it kind of lit a fire. And then the next one, through high school, we would always gather, my buddies, and everyone put $5-10 on the line. And then a buddy of mine got a bass boat. So we were fishing opens at Congamon of all places for years. And the funny point about that, I know I'm going on a little tangent here, but the funny part about Congamon was we always got killed. Like, I didn't know what I was doing in cold water at that point. This is like 15 years ago.
Yep. I
had no idea what was going on. I hadn't really gotten into fishing heavily in cold water, and it was always cold water. It was like April. So finally one year I think it was the year I really got going, and I said, well, let's fish this one last time. And I remember saying to my friend on the phone, and you know what? I'm not putting it on the lunker because that's just donating money. I'm sick of that. Screw them, right? And I laugh. Yeah, guess who caught the lunker? And when my name got called, I had to step up and say I didn't put it on the lunker.
Son of a bitch.
And the guy next to me walked away with an envelope full of cash. And I'm like, well, at least I was honest about it.
Yeah, that's true.
But I was the only person to break 5 pounds of fish that day. I got two.
Kidding. See, that's one thing that I would love to play around with is tournaments. I don't know necessarily that I've got the ability right now to kind of make it happen, but or that I've got the dedication necessarily. But I would love to get into that.
Dude, this is like fucking Spinal Tap for podcasting. What's happening?
It really is. I realize like there's no way I'm going to be able to get away with editing so much of this stuff. So I'm going to need to mention that there were dropouts along the way. So there might not be necessarily the most coherent, but I think it's kind of hilarious, actually.
All right. We're back on the computer one, man. My phone is dead.
I had a feeling. I was like, we'll see what happens here.
Yeah. I mean, with tournaments in the state right now, I mean, there's a couple different groups that do them, and plus there's nationwide groups that'll run a state tournament.
Yep.
From out of state. It's kind of crazy. You have a lot of options. Like take this weekend for example. This weekend I'm in. Let me think about this. There's a 3-day tournament that I believe is run from a gentleman out of state. I think it was like $50 to get into. It's the Catch COVID or what is it? I'm sorry. I don't want to jack this up. Catch Bass, not COVID. Best 19 fish. I see what he did there. It's very clever.
That's awesome.
So it'll be best 19 fish lengthwise. Almost all, I don't know of any online tournaments. At least I haven't been a part of them that do weight.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be length based. So
I think it's easier to prove when you're doing an online tournament. It's just easier to kind of prove it because you can have that. What is it? The when you're measuring the fish, you can use the hard plastic instead of the tape style.
Well, when I was listening to you and Paul talk about it,
Yep.
The hard plastic ones are probably on their way out. There was a couple incidents like in divisions way above my head where I think they were being bent to make fish look longer.
They're being bent, really? I thought they were too like what do you call them?
Well, I don't know anybody who did this. I'm not throwing aspersions, but I saw a picture and I was shocked.
Yeah. Some derpy looking fish out there though, No,
dude, no. I'll send you a picture. I'll send you a picture of what I saw and you'll be like, oh, I get it. It was misuse of a board. Believe it was, because if you have a board that's point A to point B and all of a sudden you make A and B closer, whatever you're measuring is now going to be longer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, there was recently Ben Milliken did a tournament. I think what did he call it? Because he wasn't. I think he does something that he calls a Slaunch Monster Classic, and then he wasn't able to do the regular tournament, so he did an online tournament. And there were some that he had to disqualify, and the ones that he disqualified were anybody who used a tape, and it was for exactly that reason. It was because with a tape you can take and just fold it. Like you can take 2 inches, fold it. It's right underneath. Nobody's going to see that fish. They're just going to see whether the mouth was where it was supposed to be and where the tail lands. So I can buy you some extra inches there. But I never thought anybody would try and bend those out. That's crazy.
Well, I don't know. I don't know the story. I'm not casting aspersions. I just saw that picture and said that can't be real.
Yeah.
But the industry standard seems to be the laser etched metal. The brand is Catch boards. I actually just bought one this year. And I'm not endorsed by them or advertising for them. It's just they're really nice. It's just it's the damn nicest ruler I've ever owned. But they have that that vertical surface on the back on one end, so you can put the fish up to it. There's a certain way you have to take your picture. That's your hand, if it's in the picture, has to be in a certain position.
Yep.
You have to have great example. I was in a tournament last weekend, and there was a side pool for pickerel, and I guess the top turned in pickerel was disqualified because the picture wasn't taken inside of the boat, and compared to the bass, because of the teeth on a pickerel, there was a lot of leeway, and it was in there like, hey, we understand, if you have a lip gripper or something, just as long as the lip gripper's on the side and the pickerel's touching the board, it was all good. But that one was not taken in the kayak, and it had to get DQ'd.
No kidding.
So the guy went on shore and took the picture. So
that's interesting.
Yeah,
but the rules are rules, And I mean, as a guy, trust me, as a guy who does competitive trivia events for a living, I know everybody's trying to get an advantage. The human's competitive nature comes out, and it's like it just comes with the territory. It is what it is.
Yeah, and once you get the hang of it, there's tips like even like you think taking a picture of a fish on a ruler would be the easiest thing in the world, and it's not, man.
No.
I've had fish flip off that would have counted. and go into the water, and it's like shit, so even holding a fish down, a bass gets pissed off, 14, 15, 16-inch bass, they're going where they want.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes the net you use can come into play. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. But there's a number of groups that do them. I mean, the formats are left up to the imagination of whoever's running it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different formats out there. So like this weekend, aside from that COVID one that I mentioned that I'll be in for 3 days, from Friday to Sunday, there's I'm in 2 monthly tournaments. One is run, let me think about this. One's run by a guy in Virginia who runs one out of Massachusetts, and the other one's run locally. So there's 2 monthlies I'm in. And then there's a gentleman in Maine who runs a largest 5 of the year that I'm in. So there's 4 tournaments right there. And then come Monday, I'm in a bracketed tournament that a guy out east runs. So we all get randomly drawn. You call, you get in touch with your first round opponent. You pick a time, you pick a place, and it's best 3 fish.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Last
Best
weekend
3.
was a no limits one.
Yep.
So you went out on the water from whatever it was, 7 to 3, I think it was. Excuse me. And it was as many fish as you could catch over 12 inches for a grand total. And that pond I was mentioning where I have good luck with a certain style of bait. I went to that one, and for whatever reason, that pond was not on that day. I caught my first fish 10 minutes in, and then about an hour and a half went by. I got my second fish, and I said, well, look at the standings. So I had, a grand total of 28 inches of fish after 2 hours. And I looked at the standings, and there were 2 guys that had, well over 290 inches. And I'm like, oh, there goes my day.
That's crazy.
So at that point, I shifted gears and said, I'm going to move to a different pond that I know holds bigger bass and just try for the lunker.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also had large pickerel there too. So I went for that as well. And, I caught a decent bass that day and caught a couple of, good sized ones after that. But I didn't come anywhere near the top. Wow. 10. I think I finished right in the middle. Man.
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, it was fun. I love those no limit tournaments because, even a 12-inch, every 12-inch fish counts. Those are a blast.
It's kind of like MLF, isn't it? The way it works? The no limits, basically?
Well, I think they're on weight, aren't they?
Well, they are on weight, but in the sense that, like, even though it's weight, like, every fish you catch gets you some kind of mobility as far as counting,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like, so yeah, if you're no, I take that back. No, it's not a no limit in MLF because I'm new to watching even this stuff. But MLF, I think they have to weigh a pound minimum. They have to weigh a pound. So it's like if you catch like a real dink, it's not going to help you. But anything, a 1 pound fish will help you. It's not like the limit is, we're only counting 3 pounds and up, something like that.
Yeah, I get you. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy those no limit ones. They're a blast.
Yeah,
there was one fall I did that was really fun, and then this one last weekend was fun. The bracketed ones are fun. You get to get out, say hello, meet somebody new, and just kind of see where you're at. I mean, I grew up playing sports and basketball in particular, and now that my knees are shot, I ain't playing basketball anymore. I still coach, but I still have that that competitive fire. I like to get out there and have fun, and
for sure, makes things interesting too. You're not just catching fish. It kind of puts a little bit more of the sport in there in a competitive nature, and there's nothing wrong with that. I would love to get into tournaments, but I do think I'm like I had almost signed on for the what was it, the Slaunch Master quarantine or something. I forget what the hell it was called, but because they're like, yeah, you could fish from the bank. They said even if you were up north and you still had ice, if you wanted to ice fish, you could do it that way as well. But I really think I got to wait till I have a boat for me to get into any kind of tournaments anyway.
Dude, so here's the tough part, right? For anybody, whether it's bank or boat or kayak or whatever. And I know there's been a little bit of discussion about it, and people, myself in particular, I'm tentative of going into a tournament where some of people that aren't from New England, you think the Northeast and they're like, yeah, it's anything from like West Virginia up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not even a competition with, the size of the fish because they have bigger growing season. The further south you get, the bigger growing season you've got. So, it's even difficult. Like, it's difficult being in the western part of the state when the eastern part of the state has a bigger growing season because it's on the coast. It doesn't get as cold. That's why with the group I'm fishing with now, I'm the only western side of the state guy. I think I have, I can go anywhere I want, and I know that any fish I catch, they're going up against the eastern side. And last year I did okay. So it's rough when you start including, anywhere where the bass are going to get bigger. Like it's tough to say, okay, I'm in Massachusetts. I'm going to go into a nationwide tournament against a guy from Virginia or North Carolina. Because it's just, he's that angler, even if you have the same skills and you fish the same amount of time, you take away all those other variables, chances are he's going to have more big bass to go after.
Yeah, it makes sense. It definitely does.
So it's,
you take a guy even from like Virginia, although it was interesting, because the guy who won it was Ben Milliken. He won just by like, I think a half inch. It was close. And I think the guy in second place was somebody he knew. So they're both from Nebraska. And the way they were talking, they're like, oh, so it wasn't like, some like Southern, like a Texas angler or somebody who's got, just these monster bass that have this crazy growing season. So it's funny when they're like guys in Omaha think that they're up north. Like I don't really think of it as like our climate necessarily. I mean, I know they get a winter, but
I lived in Omaha for 5 years. We're on the northern side. And Omaha is on the southern side of the same parallel. Yep. So yeah, it's dead even.
No shit.
We're right there.
Yeah. I mean, but when he said that, I was just like, oh, no kidding. I guess that's pretty cool. Cause that was the first thing I thought, like the winner's going to come from Florida. The winner's going to come from Texas. The winner's going to come from Alabama or somewhere in Cali or something like that. But no. Not at all. And I don't know the number of people they had competing, but I just think it's a cool concept. The fact that you can have an organized contest and not have to have it be in one kind of area and make that competitive opportunity available to anybody who's got an app that they can download on their smartphone and the required equipment as far as, measuring your catch, whether it be a scale or the board.
It's a blast for me because when you talk the monthly online ones, I'm out there fishing anyways. Yeah. Why not? And then it's almost like a kick when you get a really big fish and like, well, that could, that, and then the two others I caught last week could have added up to something, but you didn't get into a tournament. Yep. So I just put in on it and see what happens. If I'm going to fish anyways, why not?
Yeah. No, that's a really, really good way of looking at it. Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. Now, you had referenced this a little bit earlier, and I want to go back to it. The question that I asked with that saying about how fishing tackle companies catch more suckers than the tackle actually does catch fish. In your opinion, what is the most ridiculous lure on the market right now? And the follow-up question is, have you been guilty of using it?
Most ridiculous. What define ridiculous?
Like
what
just,
are we talking?
Like gimmicky. I mean, for whatever reason too. Like I'll give you an example. I think personally, the topwater spider lures make no sense. Like, I mean, come on, they look so cool. You know what I mean?
Do you want? So I've been looking at those for one reason. I know. I don't want to get into what pond, but I live in a pond. You fished on my pond. Yeah. Did I tell you what lives all over the banks of my ponds?
Oh, yeah. I think we discovered one of those in your kayak, actually.
Yeah. The giant fisher spiders. So I've seen there's species in the South that are even bigger. Yeah. It's a prey item. I don't mind it. I don't know, man. Like, you know what? I'm going to tell you an older lure. So I know I'm going to kind of modify your question here.
Okay. No, that's good.
I'm going to tell you a lure that a buddy of mine uses that I absolutely scoffed at, and then he threw me a beating with one day. Right?
Oh, really?
The Bill Dance Dancing Eel that was around in the early 90s. Do you remember that thing?
Oh, the Dancing Eel. I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever seen one.
It literally looked like an 8-inch sperm cell with a treble hook on it, right? and a lip. So really? I one of my former coworkers, a really good friend of mine, he and I went fishing in his boat on the Connecticut River, maybe, I don't know, 3 years ago. And he had one of those tied on, and I'm just immediately busting his balls about the dancing eel. I'm like, oh, what are you going for egg cells today? What's going on? Just the whole ride up. And he just sit there and smiled. Yeah, he killed me that. He must have caught 20 smallmouth on that stupid thing. And I caught one bluegill and running lipless crankbaits. And I'm like, all right, I got nothing, and every time I went to a tackle or consignment shop that had a dancing eel, I would pick him one up knowing he would love it. I never kept one for myself, but I always thought that dancing eel was ridiculous. And man, it showed me one day.
No kidding. That's crazy, man. I think I want to say I've seen that lure before. It's almost like it's like a jointed swim bait, right?
No, it literally looks like a sperm. It's a big ball with two eyes on it, and it's got a big long eel tail. And underneath the ball part, it's got a lip where you could tie the line to, and then underneath that, it's got a little split ring sticking out with a treble hook on it.
No kidding. Jesus.
Oh my God! I always thought that lure was ridiculous, and then my buddy I think it was I can't remember if it was a 4 or 6 inch model he used.
Yeah,
man. Hey, you want to catch smallmouth out of the Connecticut? Go ahead and buy yourself a dancing eel if you can find one. Because I got nothing. I'm not buying them.
Well, and there's so many eels in the Connecticut that it's like it does kind of make a whole lot of sense.
He was using a chartreuse one or something. Or chartreuse or green. I don't know what they thought it was. I don't care. I'm never buying one.
Yeah, but it worked.
If it comes down to I have to fish against that guy, for money in the Connecticut River, I'll lose. I'll take that one on the chin. I'm not buying a dancing eel. There's nothing that can force me to buy a dancing eel.
That's hilarious, man. Oh, see, I think my goal is what I'd like to do is get a list of these like ridiculous lures and create like, eventually I'd like to do a fishing based game show. Even if it's like just once a year, and I'd like to kind of create that as like a gift, like a prize for like the loser or something like that, like the random, like so we got the banjo minnow, or we got the dancing eel, we'll go from there. We'll add some other stuff in.
And now you say the banjo minnow, when you and Paul were talking about that on the previous episode. So I've kind of seen that at work, and I get it. It's a small hook. It almost looks like a circle hook. And if I remember right, they have a weed guard, a small wire weed guard on there. Mm-hmm. But I mean, basically that thing is the equivalent of a sluggo. So
yes.
It's like a plastic stick bait, but just really, really loose. It does move around really well. And I've seen it work in some weedy locations. So I just don't think it's anywhere near as ridiculous as the dancing eel.
No, I'm going to have to Google that and check it out. And I might even use the image on the podcast when I post it too. For the dancing eel. Jesus Christ. Oh man.
Dude, that dancing eel. He killed me with it. He absolutely killed me with it. I had nothing. I ran my mouth all morning and I had nothing to say once whatever it was, the dozenth smallmouth hit the boat. Yeah. He just kind of looked at me. All right. I learned my lesson.
That's freaking funny, man.
Yeah,
nice.
Dancing eel. Yep. But yeah, I mean, we haven't fished together in a while. I did look up in my database. My only prep I did for this podcast was seeing when we fished last. I know we fished in 2014 for the first time, and I think that was the first time you ever went in a kayak. That's when we went up into the Berkshires.
It was. Yeah, it was.
My little hidey holes, and then my place in 2017, and it seems we got an every 3-year pattern going, so we're gonna have to get down on the water pretty soon.
I know this needs to happen. I got now. Did I tell you about my boat situation?
No. What do you got going on?
So I have a I have a boat that is it's kind of in limbo right now. I need a trailer hitch. I also need to handle like the registration and all that other stuff that's in here. It's got a little overkill for a motor. It's old. But I just need to get it tuned up. Once I get back to work and can start making a little bit of money and put this stuff together, I'll have a fairly decent boat. And I want to start fishing. We have this great resource here, the Connecticut River, and fishing from the bank is awful. It's terrible. And that's sort of my big goal right there. And I was hoping to be able to get out and fish for stripers, but probably not going to happen. I don't see this quarantine ending anytime soon, and I'm going to need a few months to kind of rebound a little bit. Yep. But so that's what's going on boat-wise for me. But I have been I've been getting pretty adventurous as far as, getting off the beaten trail and finding some different spots to fish, and even just going out with like my spinning combo and just take a day and be like, okay, we're going to walk more than we're going to fish. We'll look around and kind of find some spots and kind of mark some things on Google Maps when we get there, and then I can go back and with whatever notes I've got, I can go and fish a place, proper or something like that. But yeah, that's,
and with me, with the kayaks, one of the things that I enjoy is, like I said, I don't have a pedal powered one.
Yep.
One of the big reasons that I like doing what I'm doing with the kayak so much is that, if I fish heavy, if I'm out there for, 8, 10, 12 hours in a day, I look at the scale like 2-3 days later. I'm like, that was good. You're out there working hard, and like with the walking the banks, it's the greatest thing to do. Having a bass boat minimizes that, and you are standing a lot, which is good.
Oh, definitely.
I kind of worry sometimes about the sitting in the kayak. Sitting for 8 hours, even if you're paddling, probably isn't the healthiest thing in the world to do. But yeah, it's good. I even told my opponent that I'm facing on Monday. He actually sent me a message yesterday. Said, "Hey, can we switch days from Wednesday to Monday? You had something going on." I said, "Absolutely, no problem."
Yep.
And then I looked at the calendar and I said, "Oh God, the 3-day tournament. I'm fishing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and now Monday." And I said, "Oh, by the time I'm done Monday, I'm going to have 2 broken arms and have dropped 20 pounds."
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. Damn.
But,
that's the thing. It's like you get out there and you're fishing, and then you're like, "Oh, I got to go all the way back," and if there's current, man.
Well, I don't, sometimes I can't say I fish a lot of places with current. It's more the wind that'll get you, but either way, it's a workout,
Yep.
My goal is to have shoulders like Dwight Howard.
Exactly.
Instead, I'm going to have 2 broken shoulders, but that's fine.
It'll be worn completely out. It'll be good. No, at that point though, you'll get one of those powered kayaks from Old Town. I'm just dropping them because I want one. I want to review one. That's what I'm doing. I'm just dropping them because I want to review one. So Old Town, give me one of your powered kayaks, and I'll give you a good review. And I'll give it a workout too, because at over 300 pounds, I'm going to give that thing a real workout because I'll be standing up in it. You know what I mean? I'm going to be making it work. So Old Town, hook me up with a couple. We'll get Shawn one. We'll get out there. We'll try it. And the beauty is, you're going to need a paddle anyway. I figure you paddle out, you do what you got to do, you use spot lock to keep you where you got to go, but then you just motor back when you're exhausted.
Yeah, but again, give and take. Now you've got an incredibly, heavy boat. You've got a battery to maintain.
Yep.
I honestly, I can see myself getting a pedal kayak in the next 2 to 5 years if I can afford it. I've had boats with trolling motors in the past, and I've lugged batteries around. It's a pain in the ass.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's not
batteries on my foot. It's
it's a pain in the foot.
Pain in the foot.
It's a pain in the foot. There we go. I think I stopped the screen share, but it's going to be in the show. Oh my goodness, man. So last question I have for you, and it's fishing related or not. What is your most unusual talent?
Unusual?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Unusual talent. Oh man.
This one is a stumper. I know some people.
Hey, that's a shitty. I have no idea.
It's terrible. It's a total stumper, man.
Oh, can I pass? Can I call a friend?
Yeah, no. You can pass. I'm just going to cut that one out. Don't worry about it. And that's the thing, Shawn. I do want to have, so I knew with Paul's really, really shy. I've known the guy for 20 years. He is super, super shy. And he listened to the show back and he's like, that was actually really good. And I was like, see, and it's easy. All you got to do is call in and we can do this. It's simple. He's got 2 little kids. I get it. And it's the same thing, like you and Eric, and, I kind of want to just run this show, but I'm not, I've only got so much quality content that I can put out there. I'm way better at podcasting than I am at fishing. That's the way I look at it. So I'm looking to kind of use this as a way to kind of pick brains and network and get sort of create some growth in the fishing community, but using my skill set in this sort of fashion. But I want to link up with the people that I've learned the most from and have gone out and fished with the most. And it's this way, you kind of get to have fun and do your thing, but not have any responsibility with it. You know what I mean? It's kind of great, That's all anybody ever wants, is just to have a good time without having any responsibility for what they're doing. I'll handle all that. It's cool, and I mean, so far the podcast, I kind of like it. I thought I was going to get shit for the open. Have you heard the podcast open with the reel spinning and then it's got my DJ tag in there?
Yeah, and then I meant to tell you this in a message. When you put on Night Swimming, I had to go to the bathroom, right? So I'm listening. I'm like, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. I get up and I click pause. So I only heard the actual spun out end of Night Swimming. So I'm like, all right, Night Swimming. I'm like, and then I had it stuck in my head all goddamn day. I'm like, I love that song, but I'm like, I haven't listened to it in a little while. I think I listened to Automatic like last year for some reason. I threw it on, but
yep.
All right.
This is weird. And there's a fishing story with Paul that involves that song. And we never got to it. And he was like, oh, you know what? After we were done recording, he's like, let's not mention it in the outro. Let's just kind of let it go and it'll eventually come back up. I was like, all right, well, cool. That means I have to have you back on again. And that's perfect. We'll just do that. But
when I listened to it and we talked, briefly over messaging, I was like, I was immediately thinking of, okay, I'm going to be a weekly, interlude, Shawn's insane fishing stories. Cause I literally wrote down a page of just insanity. Like I didn't even think about what lures to use or what line I use, what my favorite kayak is, what is my most unusual talent. I didn't think any of that shit. I'm like, what's the craziest shit I've seen on the water? And I wrote it down. I got a page.
If you have that written down, let's do that. Let's make that a regular thing. Like, you can just call in, I'll record it, and I'll put it at somewhere in each show. Like, I'll make it a segment. I used to do in Western Massholes, What's Pissing Off Dylan, with this guy I knew from college. And I think that would be great. Insane fishing stories. Oh, I like that. I'll make you an open and everything. I'll make you a whole open and everything. It'll be great.
Well, if it's going to be bizarre, you know what I would recommend for the bumpers?
What's that?
Or play it if you can get a hold of it without the vocals.
Yeah.
Primus is John the Fisherman.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay. That's a great idea. I was thinking about
that. I got creative with it. I'm like, oh my God, I wrote down all these stories and I'm like, oh, and honestly, after I wrote it down, probably another 20 hit me. I'm like, wow. Because you know how it is, man. Like, yeah. Not everybody is out there, Pauly Purehouse, looking to catch a few bass or pike. There's people out there that are just drunk, doing drugs. They're throwing a line out while they're getting wasted.
Yeah. It's true, man.
I was laughing about one of them. I'll tell you this one, and whether you use it or not, it's your business. But me and there were, I think, 5 of us all together. We're out on a pond out on the eastern side of the state. And it was early spring. It was a camping trip. We all, I still get together with a few of my high school buddies. We go camping twice a year. And we were fishing a lake, and there was one guy on the shore. And we were just kind of keeping an eye on him. And one of my buddies came up to me, and we just kind of, hooked up boats, and we had cigars. We started smoking cigars back in the day when I smoked cigars.
Yep.
And we lit cigars, and this guy on the shore was getting real belligerent about the fish he was catching. We weren't talking to him, so this was really bizarre. He's yelling stuff at us like, hey, check this out. And he's reeling in, 12, 13, 14-inch fish. I don't know. They didn't look big. But he's running his mouth. Hey, that's how you do it with a Carolina rig or something. And I'm looking at him like, he's not using a Carolina rig. He's got a Texas rig worm on. What's going on? But I'm not starting to fight with this guy. I'm yelling back, hey, nice. Yeah, I'm yelling back, hey, nice fish. Good for you. After the third one of my quieter buddies, I guess, had enough. And he just stood up and pointed at him on his kayak and yelled, you know what? Fuck you. The guy turns around and walks away, left. We were sitting there, on the shore or near the shore with an anchor down, smoking cigars, just quietly watching this unfold. And one of my buddies, who does not have a temper, absolutely snapped and screamed at this guy. It was phenomenal. So, I was thinking about that one. I didn't write that one down. And I was laughing so hard.
Hey, fuck you.
Hey, check out this one. Look at this on the Carolina. Hey, fuck you.
I had a guy. There is a guy. One place I like to fish regularly. I see him there all the time, and I'm pretty sure he's drunk every time I've seen him. Pretty sure. And I get it. Hey, I'm not going to judge anybody for what they want to do. It's fine. But I'm sitting there, and I don't know that I've seen him a bunch of times. I don't know that he ever remembers me. I mean, I don't know. I just kind of, whatever it is, it is. So I happen to be fishing and I'm having this like awful time. I got this, gone over this one little pocket and, where we were, he goes, I'm just pitching a jig into this one little pocket and I see a bowfin go by that it's got to be about 18, 20 inches long. This monster bowfin goes right by my feet. I was standing next to a tree and there was a little bit of cover going over where the roots of that tree were kind of covering. And this bowfin was just cruising on right by. And I look over at him and I was like, I'm going to regret this. I go, hey, they got bowfin in here? And he's like, oh, yeah, they got bowfin in here. You catch it? And I was like, no, I didn't. He's like, if you do, you got to kill that son of a bitch. I'm like, oh, my God, man. He's like, yeah, they stocked this pond here to get rid of the pumpkin seed population, and it backfired on them. And they're nothing but a terror and blah, blah. This fish was a beast. I shared a picture of a bowfin skull because they're amazing, man. I mean, absolutely amazing. I could not get them to bite though. Like anything I've caught,
I think 5 bowfin in my life, all in Minnesota. I love catching bowfin. They are insane to fight. And you got to watch out. The first time I caught one, God, I can't remember if I caught it on a crankbait or a spinnerbait. Really? I'd have to look. But I caught it, and it was in my fishing dive. And my fishing dive is not a kayak where if you get, I've had big pike in that thing, and I've gotten a couple injuries that I have scars from pike and, things with teeth in that kayak.
Oh, I believe it.
And I ended up landing a bowfin. And, of course, I did my homework on them about, how you grab them and this and that. But what I didn't know was they have a bony plate under their chin where their gills meet. And that thing is like on a hinge. So I went under that thing's gills to grab it.
Yep.
And the hinge flipped. And I had a 4 or 5 pound bowfin flopping around in my lap. I almost shit my pants.
I believe it.
It was crazy. So I ended up paddling all the way back. It was about a quarter mile back to my in-laws place with the bowfin in the boat with me.
Oh, Jesus.
With a net over its head. And I got it back. We took pictures of it. That was the first time I caught one. But I've had them hit crankbaits and straighten out split rings and take the hook. I mean, those things are bulldogs. I love catching them. And even like, it gets a bad rap, and this is more, because we have bowfins here, but they're only Western Mass. I think they're in the Connecticut River, and they're in the, whatever the Manhan is called in the center East Hampton. What the hell's that? What's the name of that pond?
Nashawanek? Yes.
Yep. So I've heard, I have not caught any in there, but I've heard they've been in there.
That's where I was.
So I kind of figured that when I saw all your bowfin stuff. But, the what I think really gets a bad rap around here, and it really upsets me. Even when my neighbor said something, and man, I know they don't get as big as pike, but everyone hates pickerel, and it's because of the slime on them and the teeth.
Oh yeah,
like it kind of drives me nuts because I had one of my neighbors, elderly neighbor, saw me catch a good sized pickerel. It was about 20 inches out of my pond.
Yep.
They're screaming at me to throw it up on their lawn and kill it. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, why would you? I'm not killing an animal unless I teach my kids it's okay to kill something you're going to eat. If you catch a bass and you gut hook it and it's bleeding everywhere, hey, you know what? Make it easy on it. Kill it humanely, throw it in a cooler and bring it home and cook it.
Yeah, exactly. Then it doesn't go to waste.
Exactly. Yeah. And man, people, I get it. I get pickerel steel lures and they're slimy and you can get hurt by them. But like, if over the past 2 years, I've caught my personal best pickerel like 3 times over.
Yeah, and you have caught some freaking amazing pickerel because some of the pictures that you've caught are most of them that I've like they're not even brag worthy. I think that's why they get such a bad rep because there's so many numbers of small
little
pickerel.
Ones.
Yeah, and it's like when like I caught it was at Nashawanek and I caught him on a popper. This funky little popper that's from Booyah that's got a lip like a little crankbait. And you can work it almost like a real subsurface jerkbait. It's pretty cool. And this thing just absolutely destroyed it. And I wanted to get pictures of it, but it swallowed the whole lure. Had both both trebles in its mouth, thrashing around like pickerel do, you know, there's blood all over the place, and ended up actually unhooking itself and falling right back in the water and taking off. I was like, I wouldn't have even taken pictures with him just because he was bleeding that bad. I'm like, get him in the water, hopefully he heals, you know, it's just crazy. Yep. Just attacked it. But like, if you were catching pickerel that were 18 inches plus on a regular basis, probably would feel a little bit more accomplished, you know, and they wouldn't get the reputation that they get. I think anyway.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how much. I've gone out east quite a bit.
Yep.
Over the past month, but maybe 2-3 weeks ago, I was out east. I was at one of my favorite lakes out there where the bass and the pickerel get enormous. And I've got, I can get into this in a second about the catch and release program for pins that the state does, which I love to death. So last year I got 2 state pins for chain pickerel out of this lake. And then I went back there, and in one day I caught a 22-incher, a 23-incher, a 23-incher, and then a 26.
A 26?
So, yeah, it was huge.
Holy shit.
That's, I think I sent you the picture of it. It was enormous.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We had that conversation. Oh, that's right.
The thing looks like it swallowed a goddamn shoe. It's so fat too. So I'm guessing, and I don't weigh fish anymore. I don't need to. And, you know, we can talk about scales another time or whatever, and what I think about weights, but, you know, my opinion on it, with, you know, fishing tournaments so much with length now, and then the catch and release program also being length, I don't worry about scales anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that fish was at least 5 pounds. That's a big pickerel.
That's a huge pickerel. Yeah. That's a monster.
But yeah, I mean, I don't mind them. I'm careful with them. I worry a lot more about northern pike in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I think I showed, I don't remember if I must have showed you that. I showed you that scar I have on my wrist, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the story, you know, just so if you want to have this story on at some point, the story with that was, early in the morning in Minnesota before the kids were up, my wife said, go fishing early. I went out and I decided to fish a submerged sandy point that a lot of boaters like to use, very similar to the one on Congamon in the middle pond, where people just kind of dock their boats and then sit in the sand and drink beer all day. And they're up to their waist in water sitting down, but they're drinking, and I'm sure, you know, just hanging out and doing their thing. So I decided I wanted to fish that point in Minnesota before all the pleasure boaters got there, you know, around 10 or 11 o'clock. So it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, sun's not even up. It's about a half-mile paddle. That Cobra Fish and Dive of mine is a battleship. It's not easy to paddle. It's very stable, but it's not fun. Yeah. So I got all the way there, and on my second cast, I threw a spinnerbait that had a trailer hook on it, and a pike grabbed it. And it was about, I don't know, maybe 20 inches. It wasn't big. Yeah. And this is the incident that taught me to let pike and pickerel get tired, because I reeled that thing in as fast as I could. I got it to the boat and I reached for it, and it shot out of the water. It jumped up and it sunk the trailer hook into my right wrist where I was holding the rod. So I was reaching for the left. And when it sunk in, it went in up to the barb, but that pickerel was, you know, probably a pound and a half. Oh yeah. When gravity hit, it came back down and ripped the hook out. So I'm lucky the second one didn't go in, and I'm lucky it didn't grab anything important.
Yeah, exactly. So, that could have been really bad.
Yeah. So it bounced back into the water, and I look and I'm like, oh shit, I felt the pain. And I saw the blood starting to come. So I held my hand above, you know, I grabbed below the wound with my left hand and held my hand above my head to hopefully it would stop bleeding. And while it was stopping the bleeding, you know, my heart's racing a mile a minute. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a half mile away. I got to paddle back. I might've just really fucked myself up. Yeah. And, eventually it stopped. So I looked down, and then I start assessing what just happened. Mm-hmm. And that rod I had just spooled the reel. It was an Abu Garcia Ambassador, brand new. I don't think it was a month old. Yep. That was gone. One of those nice blue ones. I think it's a C3 model. It was really nice. Mm-hmm. That was gone. That had a whole nice roll of fluorocarbon on it. That was gone. The rod it was attached to was a nice Falcon. That was gone. Jesus. All of it was in 12 feet of water in this lake, and I had to paddle back. So I waited till, you know, the throbbing stopped in my wrist, and I paddled all the way back. And it's like, you know, whatever, 7:15 now. And I opened the door, and my wife's still in bed, and she kind of sits up, and she goes, why are you back so early? And I go, good news, bad news. She goes, what's a good news? I go, well, I stopped bleeding from the wrist. And then she sat up. Yeah. Jesus. What's the bad news? I go, when Gander Mountains opens up at 8, I got to go over there and get a new rod. She's like, okay. So I told her what happened. And, I went and got a cup of coffee while I was waiting for Gander Mountain to open up.
Yep.
And there was a Cub Foods. It's like, Big Y out there. It's just a regional supermarket. So I go, my wife had asked for batteries and this and that. So I ran in, I was a little early. I ran into Cub Foods. I was the only person in there. And this is a story that I always tell people to just typify people in Minnesota, man. This is like a good stereotype because Minnesota people are just so nice, right?
Oh yeah, they are.
So there's a woman probably about, 10 years older than us. And she's working the register, and I got the batteries. I got a cup of coffee, whatever else I got. And my wrist is obviously heavily wound up, and I didn't want to, I didn't want anything. Yeah. And she goes, all bright and smiley. Oh, how's your day going today? And I go, I'm thinking, I got about 10 minutes to kill. I said, I'll tell her the story. So I told her, and I tell her, and her eyes are getting bigger and bigger. And, when I finish, she looks down at my wrist and looks at me, and she goes, a pike did that to your wrist? Or they don't call them pike. The northern did that to your wrist? I said, yes. And she got all angry, this scrunched her face up. And she goes, ooh, that turd. She couldn't bear to bring herself to call it a fucking asshole or something, but like the best she could come up with was turd, and she like meant it. Like she probably went to church over that.
Oh, I bet you she did.
Oh my God. I'm like, I love Minnesota.
Oh man.
No, probably still to this day in central Minnesota, there's a lake with a 7-foot bait casting combo with a dead pike skeleton attached to it with a spinnerbait in its mouth.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You're right though. You gotta wear them out. You gotta wear them out. This, and that's the thing. It's not so much the teeth that always get me. Cause like teeth are teeth, it's like you can grab a pickerel, and it's the thrashing, and if they, especially if they have a lure in their mouth with treble hooks, it's just like, get it out of your system, man. You gotta be careful. Let them get the thrashing out of the way.
One of the things I always recommend when, if somebody's coming out fishing, for the first time, or I kind of watch them, like the two things that I always see that I try to let people know about and let them know the consequences of, because man, I've lived it. I don't want to see somebody get hurt.
Yep.
The two things I always see are, number one, when someone gets a fish, or if someone's trying to do something with a lure, they always tend to put tension on the line. Like you're grabbing the lure, like you're now loading up a slingshot with hooks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not good. Yep. You don't know where that's going. That's the one thing. And then the other thing I always kind of keep an eye on, like, and this sounds so stupid, but I just saw it again last week.
Yep.
Aside from the law, like, people don't wear their life preservers. And I can tell you horror stories I've heard.
Oh, yeah.
People just aren't smart on the water sometimes. And, the more advanced the fisherman and the person that's out there more often, you see more safety precautions being taken.
Yep.
But, like case in point, getting back to the loading up the tension on a rod, right? Or on a lure.
Yeah.
When I get a fish, like the first thing I do when I get in the net is I click the bail over. I just let it open.
Huh.
So if the fish is in the net, or if it's in my hand, I do not want that fish to spit a lure, and then I've got 4 feet of line between hooks going 80 miles an hour at my possible face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the first thing I do is teach people, like, hey, if you get a fish, it's awesome. If you're going to handle it, great. If you can net it, great. No matter what you do, the first thing when that fish is immobilized, you flip that bail over. So some people listen, some people don't. I mean,
absolutely.
I've been hooked in 1, 2, 3, 4 different places in my life. So I try to be careful with that.
Everybody's got their horror story of when they get hooked, and I say when because pretty much everybody that I know is at one point or another has hooked themselves. Whether or not it was past the barb or not might be a different story, but everybody's got that story. That releasing the bail, that's a good idea. Usually what I do is I take the rod and again, it's different when you're on a kayak. When you're on a kayak, you can't just put the butt end of the rod up against the ground and leverage it under your arm so you have the slack. You know what I mean? The slack line. When you're in a kayak, it's a little bit of a different animal because you're not looking to dunk the rod in the water, And if you did,
well, even, I mean,
it could be even worse.
With my house, I still, if I have, a half hour or whatever, I'm not taking a boat out. I'll go into the backyard and take a cast off the shore.
Yep.
And if I've got plenty of pickerel in my pond, if I get a pickerel, or anything, I'll reel it in, I'll grab it with a hand, and then I'll flip the bail.
Yeah.
And I'll put my rod down so I can work on it with both hands.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's possible. You just don't want that. You don't want that lure loaded up and getting ready to go.
Oh,
and that thing spits it out or something.
You just don't want the tension there. And that makes sense because it is just like you said, like a slingshot thing. It lets go and it can one movement and that bait can be free and then there it goes.
Yep. And one of the things like I wanted to talk about too with the pickerel, like, with a neighbor yelling at me.
Yep.
I mean, this is just kind of a neat thing. You can read about it all over the place on the DCR site because every lake usually has some sort of a species listing of what's in there. And, you'll never see pickerel were stocked somewhere because, well, I'm not going to say never, but it's fewer ponds that see pickerel stocked because they're native around here.
Yeah. So
like when, I know largemouth and smallmouth are put on a huge plateau for fishermen and rightfully so, man, they're a lot of fun to catch and they get big. For the Northeast, for ponds up here, I mean, the only native fish that were not stocked at one point or another, usually around the Industrial Revolution, were pickerel, brook trout, and I can't find anything on yellow perch. I believe they're native. Yeah. So, when people say, I kill it, and I'm like, no, they're like one of the few natives we have. And why? What are we grown up to be serial killers now? We just kill animals? What the hell's going on?
That's the thing. It's like, it's not that idea. I think probably the best comeback you could have had for that was just release the fish, look back at your neighbor there and go, that turd. The best kind of comeback.
I could have. That would have been an appropriate response, but that's
that turd.
Yeah. With that, another thing I did briefly mention I wanted to come back to is that catch and release pin program I love to death. It always kind of, bothered me that when you get, somebody gets a 7-8 pound bass and then it's literally catch and kill. It says that on, catch and bring it to a weigh station. Yep. You're stressing out the fish. Who knows how close the nearest weigh station is? Oh yeah. Like there's a lot of them on the eastern side of the state and you can, because of being close to the ocean, you got striped bass everywhere. I mean, there's tons of them on Cape Cod and, around the shoreline, but like out here, I don't know of many. I think there's one or two in the Berkshires tops. I mean, think of how much area that covers.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're talking about hours of driving in some situations, depending on where you are. And what about the hours that you make this catch? There was a story that I heard recently about was it in Illinois? A record smallmouth. And I
saw that.
Yeah. And they were like, they did it right. Like they went to go get their pin, but it was basically the same idea. They were like, they made some phone calls middle of the night, like they were night fishing. And they had some friends or some family bring them like a cooler. They did everything they possibly could to ensure that this fish was to prevent it from being too stressed. And they released successfully, which is great, but yeah, I mean, so how does it work in mass? Because it's one of the things that I had never, ever looked into as far as the pins with catch and release. How do you verify that?
So it's pretty easy. The state are not like really, ball busters about it. Yep. Whereas like, with some of the tournaments I fish, you've got to have those fish on the ruler a certain way. Mm-hmm. You can't, you have to, if your hand's in the picture, it has to be a certain way for the state. If you send a picture of a fish on a ruler, yep. And I haven't had any problems. I'm not going to say, if X, Y, or Z happens, they're going to deny it. But every pin I've turned in, I've taken a picture with a fish on a board and sent it into them. You can send them in that day. Yep. Usually within a week, you get a response saying, "Hey, it's been submitted. We're evaluating." And then the next email you get is, "Hey, your pin's in the mail." It's pretty simple. Pretty cool. You just, honestly, I always forget to save the bookmark, but it's on the DCR site. And then you go in there and there's, what is it called? The Sport Fishing Award Program. Yep. And then it's catch and keep youth, and catch and release. And there's a little hyperlink on there that you click on. It says submit for a pin. So there's a pull down, I believe. It says what species you're going, how big is it? Please add the picture, what's your address, so we can send this to you, blah, blah, blah. So it's, that program, I think I'd have to look. I think it's 4 years old now. This is its 5th year, I believe. And it's wonderful. You can take those big fish and that have the genetics to get that big and put them back in the water.
Yeah. There was just recently, there was a bunch of pictures that I saw on some Facebook groups, albeit like national Facebook groups, fishing Facebook groups, where people were taking pictures, they're in their living room with a fish, and you're like, oh man, that's going to the taxidermist. That's the idea. Okay. Yep. I appreciate like quality taxidermy, like as an art. I think it's a little outdated for the way we live now. But I have a number in my mind and only native, like if I catch a fish in my home state that's at a certain number or higher, I'm going to take the measurements so I can have a replica made. And exactly. I'm going to release that fish so that way I can have, a piece that I can point out and as a conversation piece, as a memory, to kind of have that together more than just the pictures, but, have that there, but also like exactly the genetics. If that fish has one more spawn in its life to get those genetics out there, that's fantastic. Like, I just don't understand. Plus it's like big fish, even if you're fishing for food, the bigger the fish of a lot of these species, generally the quality of the meat goes in the shitter.
Well, it's not even that. It's when I think about bigger fish, I think there's enough mercury in there. You might as well break open a thermometer and suck that down.
That too.
Top of the food chain, like I came across a study, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I was older than that, but I found it was I believe it was UMass. Don't quote me. I'd have to pull it all up and get the sources. I'm going to give you the gist of it, but it was a statewide survey, to see how much mercury concentrated in what populations of fish. So across the state, surveys were done with largemouth, catfish, and perch, so they could cover all of the strata of the water from the top to the bottom, because perch are all over the place. Catfish are generally on the bottom, and bass are generally towards the top. Mm-hmm. I know they go deep, but generally they're in shallower water. But perch are all over the place. So this study went on, and then they found that it was perch out on Cape Cod had the least amount of mercury in them. Mm-hmm. And bass on the western side of the state did, which makes a lot more sense because, where does the mercury come from? It's on all the heavy metals in the water cycle that are coming out of factories in the Midwest. Yeah. So that was a really neat thing to see. So when I keep fish, I want to say that one day you came over and fished. I think I had frozen bass or frozen perch, something left over?
Frozen bass.
Didn't I make pizzas?
Yeah, you made pizzas.
Yeah, so I make a sauceless pizza with bass.
Yeah. And it was dynamite.
And I don't ever keep largemouth bigger than like 14 inches. So if I catch a 12 to 14 incher, I'll keep my limit. If I don't think it's a mild tasting fish. It's a white fish. It's not a big deal.
The way some people act about it, you would think it was like super oily and super strong. And I have heard from some people that if you're going to catch largemouth and eat them, you're better doing it in the spring and fall than in the summer, because in the colder, the colder the water, the better. But I prefer keeping smaller largemouth when ice fishing. Oh, okay.
And that's based on experience. It seems like the warmer the water gets, there's two types of parasites you find in the flesh, and that the parasites seem to get more prevalent as the temperature goes up. I very rarely find them. Yeah, one of them is like this little yellow, I think it's a worm, but it almost looks like a man, how do I describe this? It almost looks like a seed, like a little tiny seed. I'm talking like 1/4 inch, if even that big. Yeah. And then the other one's like it's a peppering. It almost looks like, and that parasite can even show up on the fins. So if I catch a bass and I see that in fins, I'm not even touching that. The other one's inside the flesh. So if I look real quick, don't see the peppering, boom. Okay. So then I get it home. If I cut it open, and I see that yellow thing, those yellow things can be pulled out or cooked out. So yeah. But like I said, I'm not going out there catching, I had 24 bass day and they were all over 16 inches. That means I'm bringing none home. I'm not, my sweet spot is 12 to 14 inches. They're legal to keep. They're not full grown. And all that really does, after talking with my mentor down there in Oklahoma and the way he managed his pond, mm-hmm. he would keep a few small bass every year, because those bass are putting such a taxation on the food chain. You're freeing up more food for the big ones to eat.
Yeah.
So he's managing his fish as a trophy, or he's managing his pond as a trophy bass fishery. And, and he's doing it because, like I said, I caught that 8.4 in 2014. And I want to say he caught a 9.5 last year, or the year before. And he caught on a little tiny crankbait. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Of course. I mean, it's just always the way. Man, that's freaking bananas, dude. But
yeah, getting back to the catch and release program, take your picture on a ruler. Like I said, I use that catch board now. I had a nice laser etched one I got from a retail store in Oklahoma that I brought home with me.
Yep.
There's those yellow hog troughs. Again, those are kind of getting phased out competition wise, but if you're not in a competition, bring one with. It's nice and light. You can throw it in a backpack.
Yeah.
The folding ones are kind of, I don't know. I don't know if I buy one. I don't like, the fewer moving parts, the better for me.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean,
if you don't have a choice, it's something,
Yeah, take the pictures. The program's there for a reason. And then when you see on the surveys on the DCR site for like the pond maps, which I'm sure you've used, it says right at the bottom of this fish species, this pond has whatever the exact terminology is. This pond has churned out this, these species pin awards. It doesn't tell you if it's catch or release or not, but it'll tell you like people have been pulling pin fish out of this lake.
And that gives you a little bit of a heads up. That's pretty cool.
So the genetics are there. I mean, it doesn't work all the time. I mean, some of those surveys, the western part of the state is a little worse on the surveys than the eastern part is. I don't know what the reason for that is. I honestly have no idea. But you see some of the ponds out in the Berkshires or in Western Mass have, survey dates of the 70s. And the maps maybe have no blurb. It'll just be a map. Whereas the ones on the Cape, it'll say, hey, survey was done in 2008 and this is what we found. And hey, we've been throwing tiger muskies in here or whatever, or, it's a lot more informative. I don't know if that's because of the tourism. I honestly have no idea, but it just seems like the ponds out east have a lot more information on them when you go on that site. A lot I don't know, man. I just try to learn.
Yeah. I'm going to look into that, man, because I think that, like any way that you can sort of document like other than, the stories like this kind of stuff, like we're just talking about it and sharing it with people. But anytime that you can kind of certify like what some of these amazing catches and do so in a responsible way for the for the species and the and
not for the species. We don't want anything to do with the species.
You know what I mean? For the species, but also like the fishing community. Like I think that's there's some other states that could probably learn a little something like that. That's freaking amazing, dude. This has been a really good show. Like technical difficulties and all. This has been a really, really good show.
You're gonna have three. You're gonna have to break this up into 3 podcasts. I just filled up a week of programming for you. 2 weeks of programming for you.
Oh yeah, we're going on 3 hours now, man. So I'm gonna.
I haven't even got into the crazy shit yet.
I know. No, this is good. We'll start them off kind of light. We'll work out some of this stuff, and we'll work it on in there. But I'm gonna look up that Primus song and see if I can find an instrumental. If I can't find an instrumental, I might just EQ it out with the vocals or just grab the intro or something. But I'm gonna come up with an open for you, man, and we'll have you do like I'll just have you record a bunch of them. Well, let me know when you're available. I'll record a bunch of them. I'll get them all set up. I'll put them together and drop them right into an episode. It'll be great.
Yeah, well, you know what? You're thinking about it with the theme song there. Why don't you, if you're recording this, ready? Let's go silent for a second.
All right.
Shawn. So now put that in Shawn the Fisherman. All right. Just leave the lyrics in.
Say it one more time.
Shawn.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Fire that in there.
I probably could edit that in there nicely and make it work. Might even be able to match the key too.
But you want to do it poorly. So
yeah. Shawn.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh man. Awesome. Well, hey, this was really, really good. I'm going to edit this and I probably won't post this one for a few days anyway, just because the last one just went up a couple days ago. But
yeah, take your time, man.
Yeah, I'll get this one out there and we'll put some stuff together. Dude, thanks for doing this.
Hey, no problem, man. This was a blast. When I heard you were doing the fishing stuff, when you sent me that message, I was immediately on board. Like, I want to have some fun here, talk a little bit. But I mean, the big thing I want to stress is for anybody who's listening. I mean, get out and fish. I'm not an expert. I fish a lot, but my opinions are just that, opinions.
Yeah, right? That's exactly it. And there's no, one sort of way. What works for you might not work for somebody else, or vice versa. It's like, go out and have a good time. Be responsible. Pick up after your goddamn selves while you're out there. No fishing line anywhere, and pick up if anybody else is a moron and leaves something behind. Pick up after them as well, because we only get one planet, right? So might as well take freaking care of it. Awesome,
and
dude.
Wear a life preserver.
Yes, wear a life preserver. Even on the bank. Some of us should. I mean, although you should be wearing a helmet too, if that's the case.
I was gonna suggest water wings for the bank. You'll be all right with those.
I'm doing it. I'm gonna make Jigs and Bigs water wings as merch. Soon to come. I'm working on a logo. I want to do some hats. I think it'd be great. Jigs and Bigs hats. Awesome, dude.
Cool.
All right.
Let me know. I'm looking forward to contribute, man. If hopefully this doesn't start any shit storms. You're going to see the emails, not me.
No, I'm sure it'll be fine, man. I love it. All right, sounds good.
All right, brother. I will talk to you soon. Tight lines, and I'll be sure to give you a buzz next week. Let you know how this weekend goes for me if I have use of my arms after it.
Good luck. Yeah, you might want to download a voice to text app or something.
Yeah.
Holding that phone up might be a little bit too much. Nice, man. You have a good one. Take care. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks, Rob. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you, bud.
Later.
See, I told you it was worth waiting until the end and listening to all of that, man. This was really, really great. I'm looking forward to doing more stuff with Shawn. And by the way, I just want to throw this out there, guys, as a quick shout out. A couple of I've been getting lots of feedback about this podcast, and I cannot thank you enough. If you're an angler and you enjoy this show, please do me a favor and support the show just by simply sharing this with a friend. Jump on social media and share the podcast there. If you dig this, let somebody else know about it. That would be fantastic. I do have a few things that I'm working on right now. I'm going to give it a few months, and then I think I'm going to do our first giveaway. I'm going to work with a tackle company and put together a little package and do some kind of a giveaway, something like that. But I really want to hear from you guys. I use Anchor as my platform. A lot of you guys know that. You can leave voice messages on Anchor. It's really, really easy. If you go into the show notes, there's a link right there. You can just tap that link and go ahead, leave me a voice message. And if your message is something, I'll mention it in the show. When you've left me a message there, I may actually be able to even take that whole file and drop it right into the show if you want to be involved. Also, if you want to be a guest of Jigs and Bigs, I would love it to have some new folks. We can do this on Zoom. I've been using as a platform to record all this. And just get in touch with me. Let me know what works. Remember, you can always email jigsandbigs413@gmail.com, jigsandbigs413@gmail.com. If you follow us on Instagram or you follow the Facebook page for Jigs and Bigs, you can shoot me a message over there as well. I'll be glad to reach out to any of you guys and schedule some time to do some interviews and have some fun. We'll talk about some fishing, talk about some great stories. I think really that's ultimately what we all want to do. Got a couple other things in the works right now, and I'm hoping that things line up the way that I'm expecting that they will. And if that's the case, I think we're going to have ourselves a great show, everybody. Thank you so much, everyone. Have yourselves a great one. Tight lines, everybody. Take care.